Chapter 30. The more I knew of the inmates of Moor House, the better I liked them. In a few days I had so far recovered my health that I could sit up all day and walk out sometimes. I could join with Diana and Mary in all their occupations, converse with them as much as they wished, and aid them when and where they would allow me. There was a reviving pleasure in this intercourse, of a kind now tasted by me for the first time, the pleasure arising from perfect congeniality of tastes, sentiments, and principles. I liked to read what they liked to read. What they enjoyed delighted me. What they approved, I reverenced. They loved their sequestered home. I, too, in the gray, small, antique structure, with its low roof, its latticed casements, its moldering walls, its avenue of aged firs, all grown aslant under the stress of mountain winds, its garden, dark with yew and holly, and where no flowers but of the hardiest species would bloom, found a charm both potent and permanent. They clung to the purple moors behind and around their dwelling, to the hollow vale into which the pebbly bridle path leading from their gate descended, and which wound between fern banks first, and then amongst a few of the wildest little pasture fields that ever bordered a wilderness of heath, or gave sustenance to a flock of grey moorland sheep. With their little mossy-faced lambs, they clung to this scene, I say, with a perfect enthusiasm of attachment. I could comprehend the feeling, and share both its strength and truth. I saw the fascination of the locality. I felt the consecration of its loneliness. My eye feasted on the outline of swell and sweep, on the wild coloring communicated to ridge and dell by moss, by heath bell, by flower-sprinkled turf, by brilliant bracken and mellow granite crag. These details were just to me what they were to them, so many pure and sweet sources of pleasure. The strong blast and the soft breeze, the rough and the halcyon day, the hours of sunrise and sunset, the moonlight and the clouded night, developed for me, in these regions, the same attraction as for them, wound round my faculties the same spell that entranced theirs. Indoors we agreed equally well. They were both more accomplished and better read than I was, but with eagerness I followed in the path of knowledge they had trodden before me. I devoured the books they lent me. Then it was full satisfaction to discuss with them in the evening what I had perused during the day. Thought fitted thought, opinion met opinion. We coincided, in short, perfectly. If in our trio there was a superior and a leader, it was Diana. Physically, she far excelled me. She was handsome. She was vigorous. In her animal spirits there was an affluence of life and certainty of flow, such as excited my wonder, while it baffled my comprehension. I could talk a while when the evening commenced, but the first gush of vivacity and fluency gone, I was fain to sit on a stool at Diana's feet, to rest my head on her knee, and listen alternately to her and Mary, while they sounded thoroughly the topic on which I had but touched. Diana offered to teach me German. I liked to learn of her. I saw the part of instructress pleased and suited her, that of scholar pleased and suited me no less. Our natures dovetailed. Mutual affection of the strongest kind was the result. They discovered I could draw. Their pencils and color boxes were immediately at my service. My skill, greater in this one point than theirs, surprised and charmed them. Mary would sit and watch me by the hour together. Then she would take lessons, and a docile, intelligent, assiduous pupil she made. Thus occupied and mutually entertained, days passed like hours and weeks like days. As to Mr. St. John, the intimacy, which had arisen so naturally and rapidly between me and his sisters, did not extend to him. One reason of the distance yet observed between us was that he was comparatively seldom at home. A large proportion of his time appeared devoted to visiting the sick and poor among the scattered population of his parish. No weather seemed to hinder him in these pastoral excursions. Rain or fair, he would, when his hours of morning study were over, take his hat and, followed by his father's old pointer, Carlo, go out on his mission of love or duty. I scarcely know in which light he regarded it. Sometimes, when the day was very unfavorable, his sisters would expostulate. He would then say, with a peculiar smile, more solemn than cheerful, "And if I let a gust of wind or a sprinkling of rain turn me aside from these easy tasks, what preparation would such sloth be for the future I propose to myself?" Diana and Mary's general answer to this question was a sigh and some minutes of apparently mournful meditation. But besides his frequent absences, there was another barrier to friendship with him. He seemed of a reserved and abstracted, an evening of a brooding nature. Zealous in his ministerial labors, blameless in his life and habits, he yet did not appear to enjoy that mental serenity, that inward content, which should be the reward of every sincere Christian and practical philanthropist. Often, of an evening, when he sat at the window, his desk and papers before him, he would cease reading or writing, rest his chin on his hand, and deliver himself up to I know not what course of thought. But that it was perturbed and exciting may be seen in the frequent flash and changeful dilation of his eye. I think, moreover, that nature was not to him that treasury of delight it was to his sisters. He expressed once, and but once in my hearing, a strong sense of the rugged charm of the hills, and an inborn affection for the dark roof and hoary walls he called his home, but there was more of gloom than pleasure in the tone and words in which the sentiment was manifested, and never did he seem to roam the moors for the sake of their soothing silence, never seek out or dwell upon the thousand peaceful delights they could yield. Incommunicative as he was, some time elapsed before I had an opportunity of gauging his mind. I first got an idea of its caliber when I heard him preach in his own church at Morton. I wish I could describe that sermon, but it is past my power. I cannot even render faithfully the effect it produced on me. It began calm, and truly, as far as delivery and pitch of voice went, it was calm to the end, and earnestly felt, yet strictly restrained zeal breathed soon in the distinct accents, and prompted the nervous language. This grew to force, compressed, condensed, controlled. The heart was thrilled, the mind astonished, by the power of the preacher. Neither were softened. Throughout there was a strange bitterness, an absence of consolatory gentleness. Stern allusions to Calvinistic doctrines, election, predestination, reprobation, were frequent, and each reference to these points sounded like a sentence pronounced for doom. When he had done, instead of feeling better, calmer, more enlightened by his discourse, I experienced an inexpressible sadness, for it seemed to me, I know not whether equally so to others, that the eloquence to which I had been listening had sprung from a depth where lay turbid dregs of disappointment, where moved troubling impulses of insatiate yearnings and disquieting aspirations. I was sure St. John Rivers, pure-lived, conscientious, zealous as he was, had not yet found that peace of God which pass all understanding. He had no more found it, I thought, than had I with my concealed and racking regrets for my broken idol and lost Elysium, regrets to which I have latterly avoided referring, but which possessed me and tyrannized over me ruthlessly. Meantime a month was gone. Diana and Mary were soon to leave Moor House, and return to the far different life and scene which awaited them, as governesses in a large, fashionable, south of England city, where each held a situation in families by whose wealthy and haughty members they were regarded only as humble dependents, and who neither knew nor sought out their innate excellences, and appreciated only their acquired accomplishments as they appreciated the skill of their cook or the taste of their waiting woman. Mr. St. John had said nothing to me yet about the employment he had promised to obtain for me, yet it became urgent that I should have a vocation of some kind. One morning, being left alone with him a few minutes in the parlor, I ventured to approach the window recess, which his table, chair, and desk consecrated as a kind of study, and I was going to speak, though not very well knowing in what words to frame my inquiry, for it is at all times difficult to break the ice of reserve glassing over such natures as his, when he saved me the trouble by being the first to commence a dialogue. Looking up as I drew near, "You have a question to ask of me," he said. "Yes, I wish to know whether you have heard of any service I can offer myself to undertake. I found or devised something for you 3 weeks ago, but as you seemed both useful and happy here, as my sisters had evidently become attached to you, and your society gave them unusual pleasure, I deemed it inexpedient to break in on your mutual comfort till their approaching departure from Marsh End should render yours necessary." "And they will go in 3 days now," I said. "Yes, and when they go, I shall return to the parsonage at Morton. Hannah will accompany me, and this old house will be shut up." I waited a few moments, expecting he would go on with the subject first broached, but he seemed to have entered another train of reflection. His look denoted abstraction from me and my business. I was obliged to recall him to a theme, which was of necessity one of close and anxious interest to me. What is the employment you had in view, Mr. Rivers? I hope this delay will not have increased the difficulty of securing it. Oh, no, since it is an employment which depends only on me to give, and you to accept. He again paused. There seemed a reluctance to continue. I grew impatient. A restless movement or two, and an eager and exacting glance fastened on his face, conveyed the feeling to him as effectually as words could have done, and with less trouble. You need be in no hurry to hear, he said. Let me frankly tell you, I have nothing eligible or profitable to suggest. Before I explain, recall, if you please, my notice, clearly given, that if I helped you, it must be as the blind man would help the lame. I am poor, for I find that, when I have paid my father's debts, all the patrimony remaining to me will be this crumbling grange, the row of scathed firs behind, and the patch of moorish soil, with the yew trees and holly bushes in front. I am obscure. Rivers is an old name, but of the three sole descendants of the race, two earn the dependence crust among strangers, and the third considers himself an alien from his native country, not only for life, but in death. Yes, and deems, and is bound to deem, himself honored by the lot, and aspires but after the day when the cross of separation from fleshly ties shall be laid on his shoulders, and when the head of that church militant of whose humblest members he is one, shall give the word, Rise, follow me. St. John said these words as he pronounced his sermons, with a quiet, deep voice, with an unflushed cheek, and a coruscating radiance of glance. He resumed, and since I am myself poor and obscure, I can offer you but a service of poverty and obscurity. You may even think it degrading, for I see now your habits have been what the world calls refined. Your tastes lean to the ideal, and your society has at least been amongst the educated. But I consider that no service degrades which can better our race. I hold that the more arid and unreclaimed the soil where the Christian labor's task of tillage is appointed him, the scantier the meed his toil brings, the higher the honor. His, under such circumstances, is the destiny of the pioneer, and the first pioneers of the gospel were the apostles. Their captain was Jesus, the Redeemer himself. Well, I said, as he again paused, proceed. He looked at me before he proceeded. Truly, he seemed leisurely to read my face, as if its features and lines were characters on a page. The conclusions drawn from this scrutiny he partially expressed in his succeeding observations. I believe you will accept the post I offer you, said he, and hold it for a while, not permanently, though, any more than I could permanently keep the narrow and narrowing, the tranquil, hidden office of English country incumbent, for in your nature is an alloy as detrimental to repose as that in mine, though of a different kind. Do explain, I urged, when he halted once more. I will, and you shall hear how poor the proposal is, how trivial, how cramping. I shall not stay long at Morton, now that my father is dead and that I am my own master. I shall leave the place probably in the course of a 12-month, but while I do stay, I will exert myself to the utmost for its improvement. Morton, when I came to it 2 years ago, had no school. The children of the poor were excluded from every hope of progress. I established one for boys. I mean now to open a second school for girls. I have hired a building for the purpose, with a cottage of 2 rooms attached to it for the mistress's house. Her salary will be £30 a year. Her house is already furnished, very simply, but sufficiently, by the kindness of a lady, Miss Oliver, the only daughter of the sole rich man in my parish, Mr. Oliver, the proprietor of a needle factory and iron foundry in the valley. The same lady pays for the education and clothing of an orphan from the workhouse, on condition that she shall aid the mistress in such menial offices connected with her own house and the school, as her occupation of teaching will prevent her having time to discharge in person. Will you be this mistress? He put the question rather hurriedly. He seemed half to expect an indignant, or at least a disdainful rejection of the offer, not knowing all my thoughts and feelings, though guessing some. He could not tell in what light the lot would appear to me. In truth, it was humble, but then it was sheltered, and I wanted a safe asylum. It was plodding, but then, compared with that of a governess in a rich house, it was independent, and the fear of servitude with strangers entered my soul like iron. It was not ignoble, not unworthy, not mentally degrading. I made my decision. I thank you for the proposal, Mr. Rivers, and I accept it with all my heart. But you comprehend me, he said. It is a village school. Your scholars will be only poor girls, cottagers' children, at the best, farmers' daughters. Knitting, sewing, reading, writing, ciphering will be all you will have to teach. What will you do with your accomplishments? What, with the largest portion of your mind, sentiments, tastes? Save them till they are wanted. They will keep. You know what you undertake, then? I do. He now smiled, and not a bitter or a sad smile, but one well pleased and deeply gratified. And when will you commence the exercise of your function? I will go to my house tomorrow and open the school, if you like, next week. Very well, so be it. He rose and walked through the room. Standing still, he again looked at me. He shook his head. What do you disapprove of, Mr. Rivers? I asked. You will not stay at Morton long. No, no. Why? What is your reason for saying so? I read it in your eye. It is not of that description which promises the maintenance of an evening tenor in life. I am not ambitious. He started at the word ambitious. He repeated, no. What made you think of ambition? Who is ambitious? I know I am. But how did you find it out? I was speaking of myself. Well, if you are not ambitious, you are, he paused. What? I was going to say impassioned, but perhaps you would have misunderstood the word and been displeased. I mean that human affections and sympathies have a most powerful hold on you. I am sure you cannot long be content to pass your leisure in solitude and to devote your working hours to a monotonous labor wholly void of stimulus, any more than I can be content, he added, with emphasis, to live here buried in morass, pent in with mountains, my nature, that God gave me, contravened, my faculties, heaven bestowed, paralyzed, made useless. You hear now how I contradict myself. I, who preached contentment with a humble lot, and justified the vocation evening of hewers of wood and drawers of water in God's service, I, his ordained minister, almost rave in my restlessness. Well, propensities and principles must be reconciled by some means. He left the room. In this brief hour I had learnt more of him than in the whole previous month, yet still he puzzled me. Diana and Mary Rivers became more sad and silent as the day approached for leaving their brother and their home. They both tried to appear as usual, but the sorrow they had to struggle against was one that could not be entirely conquered or concealed. Diana intimated that this would be a different parting from any they had ever yet known. It would probably, as far as St. John was concerned, be a parting for years. It may be a parting for life. He will sacrifice all to his long-framed resolves, she said, natural affection and feelings more potent still. St. John looks quiet, Jane, but he hides a fever in his vitals. You would think him gentle, yet in some things he is inexorable as death, and the worst of it is my conscience will hardly permit me to dissuade him from his severe decision. Certainly, I cannot for a moment blame him for it. It is right, noble, Christian, yet it breaks my heart, and the tears gushed to her fine eyes. Mary bent her head low over her work. We are now without father. We shall soon be without home and brother, she murmured. At that moment a little accident supervened, which seemed decreed by fate purposely to prove the truth of the adage that misfortunes never come singly, and to add to their distresses the vexing one of the slip between the cup and the lip. St. John passed the window reading a letter. He entered. Our Uncle John is dead, said he. Both the sisters seemed struck, not shocked or appalled. The tidings appeared in their eyes rather momentous than afflicting. Dead, repeated Diana. Yes, she riveted a searching gaze on her brother's face. And what then? She demanded in a low voice. What then? Die? He replied, maintaining a marble immobility of feature. What then? Why, nothing. Read. He threw the letter into her lap. She glanced over it and handed it to Mary. Mary perused it in silence and returned it to her brother. All three looked at each other, and all three smiled, a dreary, pensive smile enough. Amen. We can yet live, said Diana at last. At any rate, it makes us no worse off than we were before, remarked Mary. Only it forces rather strongly on the mind the picture of what may have been, said Mr. Rivers, and contrasts it somewhat too vividly with what is. He folded the letter, locked it in his desk, and again went out. For some minutes no one spoke. Diana then turned to me. Jane, you will wonder at us and our mysteries, she said, and think us hard-hearted beings not to be more moved at the death of so near a relation as an uncle. But we have never seen him or known him. He was my mother's brother, my father, and he quarreled long ago. It was by his advice that my father risked most of his property in the speculation that ruined him. Mutual recrimination passed between them. They parted in anger and were never reconciled. My uncle engaged afterwards in more prosperous undertakings. It appears he realized a fortune of £20,000. He was never married, and had no near kindred but ourselves and one other person, not more closely related than we. My father always cherished the idea that he would atone for his error by leaving his possessions to us. That letter informs us that he has bequeathed every penny to the other relation, with the exception of 30 guineas, to be divided between St. John, Diana, and Mary Rivers for the purchase of 3 mourning rings. He had a right, of course, to do as he pleased, and yet a momentary damp is cast on the spirits by the receipt of such news. Mary and I would have esteemed ourselves rich with £1,000 each, and to St. John such a sum would have been valuable for the good it would have enabled him to do. This explanation given, the subject was dropped, and no further reference made to it by either Mr. Rivers or his sisters. The next day I left Marsh End for Morton. The day after, Diana and Mary quitted it for distant B. In a week, Mr. Chapter Roman 31. My home, then, when I at last find a home, is a cottage, a little room with whitewashed walls and a sanded floor, containing 4 painted chairs and a table, a clock, a cupboard, with 2 or 3 plates and dishes, and a set of tea things in delf. Above, a chamber of the same dimensions as the kitchen, with a deal bedstead and chest of drawers, small, yet too large to be filled with my scanty wardrobe, though the kindness of my gentle and generous friends has increased that, by a modest stock of such things as are necessary. It is evening. I have dismissed, with the fee of an orange, the little orphan who serves me as a handmaid. I am sitting alone on the hearth. This morning, the village school opened. I had 20 scholars, but 3 of the number can read, none write or cipher. Several knit, and a few sew a little. They speak with the broadest accent of the district. At present, they and I have a difficulty in understanding each other's language. Some of them are unmannered, rough, intractable, as well as ignorant, but others are docile, have a wish to learn, and evince a disposition that pleases me. I must not forget that these coarsely clad little peasants are of flesh and blood as good as the scions of gentlest genealogy, and that the germs of native excellence, refinement, intelligence, kind feeling, are as likely to exist in their hearts as in those of the best born. My duty will be to develop these germs. Surely I shall find some happiness in discharging that office. Much enjoyment I do not expect in the life opening before me. Yet it will, doubtless, if I regulate my mind and exert my powers as I ought, yield meat enough to live on from day to day. Was I very gleeful, settled, content, during the hours I passed in over their bare, humble schoolroom this morning and afternoon? Not to deceive myself, I must reply, no. I felt desolate to a degree. I felt, yes, idiot that I am, I felt degraded. I doubted I had taken a step which sank instead of raising me in the scale of social existence. I was weakly dismayed at the ignorance, the poverty, the coarseness of all I heard and saw round me, but let me not hate and despise myself too much for these feelings. I know them to be wrong, that is a great step gained. I shall strive to overcome them. To the morrow, I trust, I shall get the better of them partially, and in a few weeks, perhaps, they will be quite subdued. In a few months, it is possible, the happiness of seeing progress and a change for the better in my scholars may substitute gratification for disgust. Meantime, let me ask myself one question: which is better, to have surrendered to temptation, listened to passion, made no painful effort, no struggle, but to have sunk down in the silken snare, fallen asleep on the flowers covering it, wakened in a southern clime, amongst the luxuries of a pleasure villa, to have been now living in France, Mr. Rochester's mistress, delirious with his love half my time, for he would, oh, yes, he would have loved me well for a while. He did love me. No one will ever love me so again. I shall never more know the sweet homage given to beauty, youth, and grace, for never to any one else shall I seem to possess these charms. He was fond and proud of me. It is what no man besides will ever be. But where am I wandering, and what am I saying, and above all, feeling? Whether is it better, I ask, to be a slave in a fool's paradise at Marseilles, fevered with delusive bliss one hour, suffocating with the bitterest tears of remorse and shame the next, or to be a village schoolmistress, free and honest, in a breezy mountain nook in the healthy heart of England? Yes, I feel now that I was right when I adhered to principle and law, and scorned and crushed the insane promptings of a frenzied moment. God directed me to a correct choice. I thank His providence for the guidance. Having brought my eventide musings to this point, I rose, went to my door, and looked at the sunset of the harvest day, and at the quiet fields before my cottage, which, with the school, was distant half a mile from the village. The birds were singing their last strains, the air was mild, the dew was balm. While I looked, I thought myself happy, and was surprised to find myself before long weeping. And why? For the doom which had reft me from adhesion to my master, for him I was no more to see, for the desperate grief and fatal fury, consequences of my departure, which may now, perhaps, be dragging him from the path of right, too far to leave hope of ultimate restoration there. At this thought, I turned my face aside from the lovely sky of Eve and lonely vale of Morton. I say lonely, for in that bend of it visible to me there was no building apparent save the church and the parsonage, half-hidden trees, and, quite at the extremity, the roof of Vale Hall, where the rich Mr. Oliver and his daughter lived. I hid my eyes, and leant my head against the stone frame of my door, but soon a slight noise near the wicket, which shut in my tiny garden from the meadow beyond it, made me look up. A dog, old Carlo, Mr. Rivers' pointer, as I saw in a moment, was pushing the gate with his nose and scent. John himself leant upon it with folded arms, his brow knit, his gaze, grave almost to displeasure, fixed on me. I asked him to come in. No, I cannot stay. I have only brought you a little parcel my sisters left for you. I think it contains a color box, pencils, and paper. I approached to take it. A welcome gift it was. He examined my face, I thought, with austerity, as I came near. The traces of tears were doubtless very visible upon it. Have you found your first day's work harder than you expected? He asked. Oh, no. On the contrary, I think in time I shall get on with my scholars very well. But perhaps your accommodations, your cottage, your furniture have disappointed your expectations? They are, in truth, scanty enough. But, I interrupted, my cottage is clean and weatherproof, my furniture sufficient and commodious. All I see has made me thankful, not despondent. I am not absolutely such a fool and sensualist as to regret the absence of a carpet, a sofa, and silver plate. Besides, 5 weeks ago I had nothing. I was an outcast, a beggar, a vagrant. Now I have acquaintance, a home, a business. I wonder at the goodness of God, the generosity of my friends, the bounty of my lot. I do not repine. But you feel solitude and oppression? The little house there behind you is dark and empty. I have hardly had time yet to enjoy a sense of tranquility, much less to grow impatient under one of loneliness. Very well, I hope you feel the content you express. At any rate, your good sense will tell you that it is too soon yet to yield to the vacillating fears of Lot's wife. What you had left before I saw you, of course I do not know, but I counsel you to resist firmly every temptation which would incline you to look back. Pursue your present career steadily, for some months at least. It is what I mean to do, I answered. Son, John continued, it is hard work to control the workings of inclination and turn the bent of nature, but that it may be done, I know from experience. God has given us, in a measure, the power to make our own fate, and when our energies seem to demand a sustenance they cannot get, when our will strains after a path we may not follow, we need neither starve from inanition nor stand still in despair. We have but to seek another nourishment for the mind, as strong as the forbidden food it longed to taste, and perhaps purer, and to hew out for the adventurous foot a road as direct and broad as the one fortune has blocked up against us, if rougher than it. A year ago I was myself intensely miserable, because I thought I had made a mistake in entering the ministry. Its uniform duties wearied me to death. I burnt for the more active life of the world, for the more exciting toils of a literary career, for the destiny of an artist, author, orator, anything rather than that of a priest. Yes, the heart of a politician, of a soldier, of a votary of glory, a lover of renown, a luster after power, beat under my curate's surplice. I considered my life was so wretched it must be changed, or I must die. After a season of darkness and struggling, light broke and relief fell. My cramped existence all at once spread out to a plain without bounds. My powers heard a call from heaven to rise, gather their full strength, spread their wings, and mount beyond ken. God had an errand for me, to bear which afar, to deliver it well, skill and strength, courage and eloquence, the best qualifications of soldier, statesman, and orator, were all needed. For these all center in the good missionary. A missionary I resolved to be. From that moment my state of mind changed. The fetters dissolved and dropped from every faculty, leaving nothing of bondage but its galling soreness, which time only can heal. My father, truly, imposed the determination, but since his death, I have not a legitimate obstacle to contend with. Some affairs settled, a successor for Morton provided, an entanglement or two of the feelings broken through or cut asunder, a last conflict with human weakness, in which I know I shall overcome, because I have vowed that I will overcome, and I leave Europe for the East. He said this, in his peculiar, subdued, yet emphatic voice, looking, when he had ceased speaking, not at me, but at the setting sun, at which I looked too. Both he and I had our backs towards the path leading up the field to the wicket. We had heard no step on that grass-grown track. The water running in the vale was the one lulling sound of the hour and scene. We may well then start when a gay voice, sweet as a silver bell, exclaimed, "Good evening, Mr. Rivers, and good evening, old Carlo. Your dog is quicker to recognize his friends than you are, sir. He pricked his ears and wagged his tail when I was at the bottom of the field, and you have your back towards me now." It was true, though Mr. Rivers had started at the first of those musical accents, as if a thunderbolt had split a cloud over his head. He stood yet, at the close of the sentence, in the same attitude in which the speaker had surprised him, his arm resting on the gate, his face directed towards the west. He turned at last, with measured deliberation. A vision, as it seemed to me, had risen at his side. There appeared, within 3 feet of him, a form clad in pure white, a youthful, graceful form, full, yet fine in contour, and when, after bending to caress Carlo, it lifted up its head and threw back a long veil, there bloomed under his glance a face of perfect beauty. Perfect beauty is a strong expression, but I do not retrace or qualify it. As sweet features as ever the temperate clime of Albion molded, as pure hues of rose and lily as ever her humid gales and vapory skies generated and screened, justified, in this instance, the term. No charm was wanting, no defect was perceptible. The young girl had regular and delicate lineaments, eyes shaped and colored as we see them in lovely pictures, large and dark and full, the long and shadowy eyelash which encircles a fine eye with so soft a fascination, the penciled brow which gives such clearness, the white smooth forehead, which adds such repose to the livelier beauties of tint and ray, the cheek oval, fresh, and smooth, the lips, fresh too, ruddy, healthy, sweetly formed, the evening and gleaming tess without flaw, the small dimpled chin, the ornament of rich, plenteous tresses, all advantages, in short, which, combine, realize the ideal of beauty, were fully hers. I wondered as I looked at this fair creature. I admired her with my whole heart. Nature had surely formed her in a partial mood, and, forgetting her usual stinted stepmother dole of gifts, had endowed this, her darling, with a grand dame's bounty. What did St. John Rivers think of this earthly angel? I naturally asked myself that question as I saw him turn to her and look at her, and, as naturally, I sought the answer to the inquiry in his countenance. He had already withdrawn his eye from the Peri, and was looking at a humble tuft of daisies, which grew by the wicket. "A lovely evening, but late for you to be out alone," he said, as he crushed the snowy heads of the closed flowers with his foot. "Oh, I only came home from S." She mentioned the name of a large town some 20 miles distant this afternoon. "Papa told me you had opened your school, and that the new mistress was come, and so I put on my bonnet after tea, and ran up the valley to see her. This is she," pointing to me. "It is," said St. John. "Do you think you shall like Morton?" she asked of me, with a direct and naïve simplicity of tone and manner, pleasing, if childlike. "I hope I shall. I have many inducements to do so. Did you find your scholars as attentive as you expected?" "Quite. Do you like your house?" "Very much. Have I furnished it nicely?" "Very nicely, truly." "And made a good choice of an attendant for you in Alice Wood?" "You have truly. She is teachable and handy." This then, I thought, is Miss Oliver, the heiress, favored, it seems, in the gifts of fortune as well as in those of nature. What happy combination of the planets presided over her birth, I wonder. "I shall come up and help you to teach sometimes," she added. "It will be a change for me to visit you now and then, and I like a change. Mr. Rivers, I have been so gay during my stay at S. Last night, or rather this morning, I was dancing till 2 o'clock. The TH regiment are stationed there since the riots, and the officers are the most agreeable men in the world. They put all our young knife grinders and scissor merchants to shame." It seemed to me that Mr. St. John's under lip protruded, and his upper lip curled a moment. His mouth certainly looked a good deal compressed, and the lower part of his face unusually stern and square. As the laughing girl gave him this information, he lifted his gaze, too, from the daisies and turned it on her. An unsmiling, a searching, a meaning gaze it was. She answered it with a second laugh, and laughter well became her youth, her roses, her dimples, her bright eyes. As he stood, mute and grave, she again fell to caressing Carlo. "Poor Carlo loves me," said she. "He is not stern and distant to his friends, and if he could speak, he would not be silent." As she patted the dog's head, bending with native grace before his young and austere master, I saw a glow rise to that master's face. I saw his solemn eye melt with sudden fire, and flicker with resistless emotion. Flushed and kindled thus, he looked nearly as beautiful for a man as she for a woman. His chest heaved once, as if his large heart, weary of despotic constriction, had expanded, despite the will, and made a vigorous bound for the attainment of liberty. But he curbed it, I think, as a resolute rider would curb a rearing steed. He responded neither by word nor movement to the gentle advances made him. "Papa says you never come to see us now," continued Miss Oliver, looking up. "You are quite a stranger at Vale Hall. He is alone this evening, and not very well. Will you return with me and visit him?" "It is not a seasonable hour to intrude on Mr. Oliver," answered St. John. "Not a seasonable hour, but I declare it is. It is just the hour when Papa most wants company, when the works are closed and he has no business to occupy him. Now, Mr. Rivers, do come. Why are you so very shy, and so very somber?" She filled up the hiatus his silence left by a reply of her own. "I forgot," she exclaimed, shaking her beautiful curled head, as if shocked at herself. "I am so giddy and thoughtless. Do excuse me. It had slipped my memory that you have good reasons to be indisposed for joining in my chatter. Diana and Mary have left you, and Moor House is shut up, and you are so lonely. I am sure I pity you. Do come and see Papa. Not tonight, Miss Rosamond, not tonight. Mr. Sunt. John spoke almost like an automaton. Himself only knew the effort it cost him thus to refuse. Well, if you are so obstinate, I will leave you, for I dare not stay any longer. The dew begins to fall. Good evening. She held out her hand. He just touched it. Good evening, he repeated, in a voice low and hollow as an echo. She turned, but in a moment returned. Are you well? She asked. Well may she put the question. His face was blanched as her gown. Quite well, he enunciated, and with a bow he left the gate. She went one way, he another. She turned twice to gaze after him as she tripped fairy-like down the field. He, as he strode firmly across, never turned at all. This spectacle of another's suffering and sacrifice wrapped my thoughts from exclusive meditation on my own. Chapter Roman 32. I continued the labors of the village school as actively and faithfully as I could. It was truly hard work at first. Some time elapsed before, with all my efforts, I could comprehend my scholars and their nature. Wholly untaught, with faculties quite torpid, they seemed to me hopelessly dull, and, at first sight, all dull alike. But I soon found I was mistaken. There was a difference amongst them as amongst the educated, and when I got to know them, and they me, this difference rapidly developed itself. Their amazement at me, my language, my rules, and ways, once subsided, I found some of these heavy-looking, gaping rustics wake up into sharp-witted girls enough. Many showed themselves obliging, and amiable too, and I discovered amongst them not a few examples of natural politeness and innate self-respect, as well as of excellent capacity, that won both my goodwill and my admiration. These soon took a pleasure in doing their work well, in keeping their persons neat, in learning their tasks regularly, in acquiring quiet and orderly manners. The rapidity of their progress, in some instances, was even surprising, and an honest and happy pride I took in it. Besides, I began personally to like some of the best girls, and they liked me. I had amongst my scholars several farmers' daughters, young women grown, almost. These could already read, write, and sew, and to them I taught the elements of grammar, geography, history, and the finer kinds of needlework. I found estimable characters amongst them, characters desirous of information and disposed for improvement, with whom I passed many a pleasant evening hour in their own homes. Their parents, then the farmer and his wife, loaded me with attentions. There was an enjoyment in accepting their simple kindness, and in repaying it by a consideration, a scrupulous regard to their feelings, to which they were not, perhaps, at all times accustomed, and which both charmed and benefited them, because, while it elevated them in their own eyes, it made them emulous to merit the deferential treatment they received. I felt I became a favorite in the neighborhood. Whenever I went out, I heard on all sides cordial salutations, and was welcomed with friendly smiles. To live amidst general regard, though it be but the regard of working people, is like sitting in sunshine, calm and sweet, serene inward feelings bud and bloom under the ray. At this period of my life, my heart far oftener swelled with thankfulness than sank with dejection, and yet, reader, to tell you all, in the amid of this calm, this useful existence, after a day passed in honorable exertion amongst my scholars, an evening spent in drawing or reading contentedly alone, I used to rush into strange dreams at night, dreams many-colored, agitated, full of the ideal, the stirring, the stormy, dreams where, amidst unusual scenes, charged with adventure, with agitating risk and romantic chance, I still again and again met Mr. Rochester, always at some exciting crisis, and then the sense of being in his arms, hearing his voice, meeting his eye, touching his hand and cheek, loving him, being loved by him, the hope of passing a lifetime at his side, would be renewed, with all its first force and fire. Then I awoke. Then I recalled where I was and how situated. Then I rose up on my curtainless bed, trembling and quivering, and then the still, dark night witnessed the convulsion of despair and heard the burst of passion. By 9 o'clock the next morning I was punctually opening the school, tranquil, settled, prepared for the steady duties of the day. Rosamond Oliver kept her word in coming to visit me. Her call at the school was generally made in the course of her morning ride. She would canter up to the door on her pony, followed by a mounted livery servant, anything more exquisite than her appearance, in her purple habit, with her Amazon's cap of black velvet placed gracefully above the long curls that kissed her cheek and floated to her shoulders, can scarcely be imagined, and it was thus she would enter the rustic building, and glide through the dazzled ranks of the village children. She generally came at the hour when Mr. Rivers was engaged in giving his daily catechizing lesson. Keenly, I fear, did the eye of the visitress pierce the young pastor's heart. A sort of instinct seemed to warn him of her entrance, evening when he did not see it, and when he was looking quite away from the door, if she appeared at it, his cheek would glow, and his marble-seeming features, though they refused to relax, changed indescribably, and in their very quiescence became expressive of a repressed fervor, stronger than working muscle or darting glance could indicate. Of course, she knew her power, truly, he did not, because he could not, conceal it from her, in spite of his Christian stoicism. When she went up and addressed him, and smiled gaily, encouragingly, evening fondly in his face, his hand would tremble and his eye burn. He seemed to say, with his sad and resolute look, if he did not say with his lips, "I love you, and I know you prefer me. It is not despair of success that keeps me dumb. If I offered my heart, I believe you would accept it. But that heart is already laid on a sacred altar. The fire is arranged round it. It will soon be no more than a sacrifice consumed." And then she would pout like a disappointed child. A pensive cloud would soften her radiant vivacity. She would withdraw her hand hastily from his, and turn in transient petulance from his aspect, at once so heroic and so martyr-like. Son John, no doubt, would have given the world to follow, recall, retain her, when she thus left him, but he would not give one chance of heaven, nor relinquish, for the Elysium of her love, one hope of the true, eternal paradise. Besides, he could not bind all that he had in his nature, the rover, the aspirant, the poet, the priest, in the limits of a single passion. He could not, he would not, renounce his wild field of mission warfare for the parlors and the peace of Vale Hall. I learnt so much from himself in an inroad I once, despite his reserve, had the daring to make on his confidence. Miss Oliver already honored me with frequent visits to my cottage. I had learned her whole character, which was without mystery or disguise. She was coquettish but not heartless, exacting but not worthlessly selfish. She had been indulged from her birth, but was not absolutely spoilt. She was hasty but good-humored, vain she could not help it, when every glance in the glass showed her such a flush of loveliness, but not affected, liberal-handed, innocent of the pride of wealth, ingenuous, sufficiently intelligent, gay, lively, and unthinking. She was very charming, in short, evening to a cool observer of her own sex like me, but she was not profoundly interesting or thoroughly impressive. A very different sort of mind was hers from that, for instance, of the sisters of St. John. Still, I liked her almost as I liked my pupil Adel, except that, for a child whom we have watched over and taught, a closer affection is engendered than we can give an equally attractive adult acquaintance. She had taken an amiable caprice to me. She said I was like Mr. Rivers, only, certainly, she allowed, not 1/10 so handsome, though I was a nice neat little soul enough, but he was an angel. I was, however, good, clever, composed, and firm, like him. I was a lusus nator, she affirmed, as a village schoolmistress. She was sure my previous history, if known, would make a delightful romance. One evening, while, with her usual childlike activity and thoughtless yet not offensive inquisitiveness, she was rummaging the cupboard and the table drawer of my little kitchen, she discovered first two French books, a volume of Schiller, a German grammar and dictionary, and then my drawing materials and some sketches, including a pencil head of a pretty little cherub-like girl, one of my scholars, and sundry views from nature, taken in the Vale of Morton and on the surrounding moors. She was first transfixed with surprise, and then electrified with delight. Had I done these pictures? Did I know French and German? What a love! What a miracle I was! I drew better than her master in the first school in S. Would I sketch a portrait of her, to show to Papa? With pleasure, I replied, and I felt a thrill of artist delight at the idea of copying from so perfect and radiant a model. She had then on a dark blue silk dress, her arms and her neck were bare, her only ornament was her chestnut tresses, which waved over her shoulders with all the wild grace of natural curls. I took a sheet of fine cardboard and drew a careful outline. I promised myself the pleasure of coloring it, and as it was getting late then, I told her she must come and sit another day. She made such a report of me to her father that Mr. Oliver himself accompanied her next evening, a tall, massive-featured, middle-aged, and gray-headed man, at whose side his lovely daughter looked like a bright flower near a hoary turret. He appeared a taciturn, and perhaps a proud personage, but he was very kind to me. The sketch of Rosamond's portrait pleased him highly. He said I must make a finished picture of it. He insisted, too, on my coming the next day to spend the evening at Vale Hall. I went. I found it a large, handsome residence, showing abundant evidences of wealth in the proprietor. Rosamond was full of glee and pleasure all the time I stayed. Her father was affable, and when he entered into conversation with me after tea, he expressed in strong terms his approbation of what I had done in Morton School, and said he only feared, from what he saw and heard, I was too good for the place, and would soon quit it for one more suitable. Truly, cried Rosamond, she is clever enough to be a governess in a high family, Papa. I thought I would far rather be where I am than in any high family in the land. Mr. Oliver spoke of Mr. Rivers of the Rivers family with great respect. He said it was a very old name in that neighborhood, that the ancestors of the house were wealthy, that all Morton had once belonged to them. That evening now he considered the representative of that house may, if he liked, make an alliance with the best. He accounted it a pity that so fine and talented a young man should have formed the design of going out as a missionary. It was quite throwing a valuable life away. It appeared, then, that her father would throw no obstacle in the way of Rosamond's union with St. John. Mr. Oliver evidently regarded the young clergyman's good birth, old name, and sacred profession as sufficient compensation for the want of fortune. It was the 5th of November and a holiday. My little servant, after helping me to clean my house, was gone, well satisfied with the fee of a penny for her aid. All about me was spotless and bright, scoured floor, polished grate, and well-rubbed chairs. I had also made myself neat, and had now the afternoon before me to spend as I would. The translation of a few pages of German occupied an hour. Then I got my palette and pencils and fell to the more soothing, because easier occupation of completing Rosamond Oliver's miniature. The head was finished already. There was but the background to tint and the drapery to shade off. A touch of carmine, too, to add to the ripe lips, a soft curl here and there to the tresses, a deeper tinge to the shadow of the lash under the azured eyelid. I was absorbed in the execution of these nice details, when, after one rapid tap, my door unclosed, admitting St. John Rivers. I am come to see how you are spending your holiday, he said. Not, I hope, in thought. No, that is well. While you draw you will not feel lonely. You see, I mistrust you still, though you have borne up wonderfully so far. I have brought you a book for evening solace, and he laid on the table a new publication, a poem, one of those genuine productions so often vouchsafed to the fortunate public of those days, the golden age of modern literature. Alas, the readers of our era are less favored. But courage! I will not pause either to accuse or repine. I know poetry is not dead, nor genius lost, nor has mammon gained power over either, to bind or slay. They will both assert their existence, their presence, their liberty and strength again one day. Powerful angels, safe in heaven, they smile when sordid souls triumph and feeble ones weep over their destruction. Poetry destroyed, genius banished? No, mediocrity, no. Do not let envy prompt you to the thought. No, they not only live, but reign and redeem, and without their divine influence spread everywhere, you would be in hell, the hell of your own meanness. While I was eagerly glancing at the bright pages of Marmion for Marmion, it was St. John stooped to examine my drawing. His tall figure sprang erect again with a start. He said nothing. I looked up at him. He shunned my eye. I knew his thoughts well, and could read his heart plainly. At the moment I felt calmer and cooler than he. I had then temporarily the advantage of him, and I conceived an inclination to do him some good, if I could. With all his firmness and self-control, thought I, he tasks himself too far, locks every feeling and pang within, expresses, confesses, imparts nothing. I am sure it would benefit him to talk a little about this sweet Rosamond, whom he thinks he ought not to marry. I will make him talk. I said first, take a chair, Mr. Rivers, but he answered, as he always did, that he could not stay. Very well, I responded, mentally, stand if you like, but you shall not go just yet. I am determined. Solitude is at least as bad for you as it is for me. I'll try if I cannot discover the secret spring of your confidence, and find an aperture in that marble breast through which I can shed one drop of the balm of sympathy. Is this portrait like? I asked bluntly. Like whom? I did not observe it closely. You did, Mr. Rivers. He almost started at my sudden and strange abruptness. He looked at me astonished. Oh, that is nothing yet, I muttered within. I don't mean to be baffled by a little stiffness on your part. I'm prepared to go to considerable lengths. I continued, you observed it closely and distinctly, but I have no objection to your looking at it again. And I rose and placed it in his hand. A well-executed picture, he said. Very soft, clear coloring, very graceful and correct drawing. Yes, I know all that. But what of the resemblance? Who is it like? Mastering some hesitation, he answered, Miss Oliver, I presume. Of course. And now, sir, to reward you for the accurate guess, I will promise to paint you a careful and faithful duplicate of this very picture, provided you admit that the gift would be acceptable to you. I don't wish to throw away my time and trouble on an offering you would deem worthless. He continued to gaze at the picture. The longer he looked, the firmer he held it, the more he seemed to covet it. It is like, he murmured, the eye is well managed, the color, light, expression are perfect. It smiles. Would it comfort, or would it wound you to have a similar painting? Tell me that. When you are at Madagascar, or at the Cape, or in India, would it be a consolation to have that memento in your possession? Or would the sight of it bring recollections calculated to enervate and distress? He now furtively raised his eyes. He glanced at me, irresolute, disturbed. He again surveyed the picture. That I should like to have it is certain. Whether it would be judicious or wise is another question, since I had ascertained that Rosamond really preferred him, and that her father was not likely to oppose the match. I, less exalted in my views than St. John, had been strongly disposed in my own heart to advocate their union. It seemed to me that, should he become the possessor of Mr. Oliver's large fortune, he may do as much good with it as if he went and laid his genius out to wither, and his strength to waste, under a tropical sun. With this persuasion I now answered, as far as I can see, it would be wiser and more judicious if you were to take to yourself the original at once. By this time he had sat down. He had laid the picture on the table before him, and with his brow supported on both hands, hung fondly over it. I discerned he was now neither angry nor shocked at my audacity. I saw evening. That to be thus frankly addressed on a subject he had deemed unapproachable, to hear it thus freely handled, was beginning to be felt by him as a new pleasure, an unhoped for relief. Reserved people often really need the frank discussion of their sentiments and griefs more than the expansive. The sternest seeming stoic is human after all, and to burst with boldness and goodwill into the silent sea of their souls is often to confer on them the first of obligations. She likes you, I am sure, said I, as I stood behind his chair, and her father respects you. Moreover, she is a sweet girl, rather thoughtless, but you would have sufficient thought for both yourself and her. You ought to marry her. Does she like me? He asked. Certainly, better than she likes any one else. She talks of you continually. There is no subject she enjoys so much or touches upon so often. It is very pleasant to hear this, he said, very. Go on for another quarter of an hour. And he actually took out his watch and laid it upon the table to measure the time. But where is the use of going on? I asked, when you are probably preparing some iron blow of contradiction or forging a fresh chain to fetter your heart. Don't imagine such hard things. Fancy me yielding and melting, as I am doing, human love rising like a freshly opened fountain in my mind and overflowing with sweet inundation all the field I have so carefully and with such labor prepared, so assiduously sown with the seeds of good intentions, of self-denying plans. And now it is deluged with a nectarous flood, the young germs swamped, delicious poison cankering them. Now I see myself stretched on an ottoman in the drawing-room at Vale Hall at my bride Rosamond Oliver's feet. She is talking to me with her sweet voice, gazing down on me with those eyes your skillful hand has copied so well, smiling at me with these coral lips. She is mine, I am hers. This present life and passing world suffice to me. Hush! Say nothing, my heart is full of delight, my senses are entranced, let the time I marked pass in peace. I humored him, the watch ticked on, he breathed fast and low, I stood silent. Amidst this hush the quartet sped, he replaced the watch, laid the picture down, rose, and stood on the hearth. Now, said he, that little space was given to delirium and delusion. I rested my temples on the breast of temptation, and put my neck voluntarily under her yoke of flowers. I tasted her cup. The pillow was burning. There is an asp in the garland, the wine has a bitter taste, her promises are hollow, her offers false. I see and know all this. I gazed at him in wonder. It is strange, pursued he, that while I love Rosamond Oliver so wildly, with all the intensity, truly, of a first passion, the object of which is exquisitely beautiful, graceful, fascinating, I experience at the same time a calm, unwarped consciousness that she would not make me a good wife, that she is not the partner suited to me, that I should discover this within a year after marriage, and that to 12 months' rapture would succeed a lifetime of regret. This I know, strange truly, I could not help ejaculating. While something in me, he went on, is acutely sensible to her charms, something else is as deeply impressed with her defects. They are such that she could sympathize in nothing I aspired to, cooperate in nothing I undertook. Rosamond a sufferer, a laborer, a female apostle. Rosamond a missionary's wife? No, but you need not be a missionary. You may relinquish that scheme. Relinquish what? My vocation? My great work? My foundation laid on earth for a mansion in heaven? My hopes of being numbered in the band who have merged all ambitions in the glorious one of bettering their race, of carrying knowledge into the realms of ignorance, of substituting peace for war, freedom for bondage, religion for superstition, the hope of heaven for the fear of hell. Must I relinquish that? It is dearer than the blood in my veins. It is what I have to look forward to and to live for. After a considerable pause, I said, and Miss Oliver, are her disappointment and sorrow of no interest to you? Miss Oliver is ever surrounded by suitors and flatterers. In less than a month, my image will be effaced from her heart. She will forget me, and will marry, probably, someone who will make her far happier than I should do. You speak coolly enough, but you suffer in the conflict. You are wasting away. No, if I get a little thin, it is with anxiety about my prospects, yet unsettled, my departure, continually procrastinated. Only this morning, I received intelligence that the successor, whose arrival I have been so long expecting, cannot be ready to replace me for 3 months to come yet. and perhaps the 3 months may extend to 6. You tremble and become flushed whenever Miss Oliver enters the schoolroom. Again the surprised expression crossed his face. He had not imagined that a woman would dare to speak so to a man. For me, I felt at home in this sort of discourse. I could never rest in communication with strong, discreet, and refined minds, whether male or female, till I had passed the outworks of conventional reserve, and crossed the threshold of confidence, and won a place by their heart's very hearthstone. "You are original," said he, "and not timid. There is something brave in your spirit, as well as penetrating in your eye, but allow me to assure you that you partially misinterpret my emotions. You think them more profound and potent than they are. You give me a larger allowance of sympathy than I have a just claim to. When I color, and when I shake before Miss Oliver, I do not pity myself. I scorn the weakness. I know it is ignoble, a mere fever of the flesh, not, I declare, the convulsion of the soul. That is just as fixed as a rock, firm set in the depths of a restless sea. Know me to be what I am, a cold hard man." I smiled incredulously. "You have taken my confidence by storm," he continued, "and now it is much at your service. I am simply, in my original state, stripped of that blood-bleached robe with which Christianity covers human deformity, a cold, hard, ambitious man. Natural affection only, of all the sentiments, has permanent power over me. Reason, and not feeling, is my guide. My ambition is unlimited. My desire to rise higher, to do more than others, insatiable. I honor endurance, perseverance, industry, talent, because these are the means by which men achieve great ends and mount to lofty eminence. I watch your career with interest, because I consider you a specimen of a diligent, orderly, energetic woman, not because I deeply compassionate what you have gone through, or what you still suffer." "You would describe yourself as a mere pagan philosopher," I said. "No, there is this difference between me and deistic philosophers. I believe, and I believe the gospel." "You missed your epithet. I am not a pagan, but a Christian philosopher, a follower of the sect of Jesus. As his disciple I adopt his pure, his merciful, his benignant doctrines. I advocate them. I am sworn to spread them. Won in youth to religion, she has cultivated my original qualities thus. From the minute germ, natural affection, she has developed the overshadowing tree, philanthropy. From the wild stringy root of human uprightness, she has reared a due sense of the divine justice. Of the ambition to win power and renown for my wretched self, she has formed the ambition to spread my Master's kingdom, to achieve victories for the standard of the cross. So much has religion done for me, turning the original materials to the best account, pruning and training nature. But she could not eradicate nature, nor will it be eradicated till this mortal shall put on immortality. Having said this, he took his hat, which lay on the table beside my pallet. Once more he looked at the portrait. "She is lovely," he murmured. "She is well named the rose of the world, truly. And may I not paint one like it for you? Cui bono?" "No." He drew over the picture the sheet of thin paper on which I was accustomed to rest my hand in painting, to prevent the cardboard from being sullied. What he suddenly saw on this blank paper, it was impossible for me to tell, but something had caught his eye. He took it up with a snatch. He looked at the edge, then shot a glance at me, inexpressibly peculiar, and quite incomprehensible, a glance that seemed to take and make note of every point in my shape, face, and dress, for it traversed all, quick, keen as lightning. His lips parted as if to speak, but he checked the coming sentence, whatever it was. "What is the matter?" I asked. "Nothing in the world," was the reply, and replacing the paper, I saw him dexterously tear a narrow slip from the margin. It disappeared in his glove, and, with one hasty nod and "good afternoon," he vanished. "Well," I exclaimed, using an expression of the district that caps the globe, however, I, in my turn, scrutinized the paper, but saw nothing on it save a few dingy stains of paint where I had tried the tint in my pencil. Chapter Roman 33. When Mr. St. John went, it was beginning to snow. The whirling storm continued all night. The next day a keen wind brought fresh and blinding falls. By twilight the valley was drifted up and almost impassable. I had closed my shutter, laid a mat to the door to prevent the snow from blowing in under it, trimmed my fire, and after sitting nearly an hour on the hearth listening to the muffled fury of the tempest, I lit a candle, took down Marmion, and beginning, day set on Noram's castled steep, and Tweed's fair river broad and deep, and Cheviot's mountains lone, the massive towers, the donjon keep, the flanking walls that round them sweep, in yellow lustre shone. I soon forgot storm in music. I heard a noise. The wind, I thought, shook the door. No, it wasn't. John Rivers, who, lifting the latch, came in out of the frozen hurricane, the howling darkness, and stood before me, the cloak that covered his tall figure all white as a glacier. I was almost in consternation, so little had I expected any guest from the blocked-up vale that night. "Any ill news?" I demanded. "Has anything happened?" "No." "How very easily alarmed you are," he answered, removing his cloak and hanging it up against the door, towards which he again coolly pushed the mat which his entrance had deranged. He stamped the snow from his boots. "I shall sully the purity of your floor," said he, "but you must excuse me for once." Then he approached the fire. "I have had hard work to get here, I assure you," he observed, as he warmed his hands over the flame. "One drift took me up to the waist. Happily the snow is quite soft yet. But why are you come?" I could not forbear saying, rather an inhospitable question to put to a visitor, but since you ask it, I answer simply to have a little talk with you. I got tired of my mute books and empty rooms. Besides, since yesterday I have experienced the excitement of a person to whom a tale has been half told, and who is impatient to hear the sequel. He sat down. I recalled his singular conduct of yesterday, and really I began to fear his wits were touched. If he were insane, however, his was a very cool and collected insanity. I had never seen that handsome-featured face of his look more like chiseled marble than it did just now, as he put aside his snow-wet hair from his forehead and let the firelight shine free on his pale brow and cheek as pale, where it grieved me to discover the hollow trace of care or sorrow now so plainly graved. I waited, expecting he would say something I could at least comprehend, but his hand was now at his chin, his finger on his lip. He was thinking. It struck me that his hand looked wasted like his face. A perhaps uncalled for gush of pity came over my heart. I was moved to say, "I wish Diana or Mary would come and live with you. It is too bad that you should be quite alone, and you are recklessly rash about your own health." "Not at all," said he. "I care for myself when necessary. I am well now. What do you see amiss in me?" This was said with a careless, abstracted indifference, which showed that my solicitude was, at least in his opinion, wholly superfluous. I was silenced. He still slowly moved his finger over his upper lip, and still his eye dwelt dreamily on the glowing grate. Thinking it urgent to say something, I asked him soon if he felt any cold draught from the door, which was behind him. "No, no," he responded shortly and somewhat testily. "Well," I reflected, "if you won't talk, you may be still. I'll let you alone now, and return to my book." So I snuffed the candle and resumed the perusal of Marmion. He soon stirred. My eye was instantly drawn to his movements. He only took out a morocco pocket-book, from there produced a letter, which he read in silence, folded it, put it back, relapsed into meditation. It was vain to try to read with such an inscrutable fixture before me, nor could I, in impatience, consent to be dumb. He may rebuff me if he liked, but talk I would. "Have you heard from Diana and Mary lately?" "Not since the letter I showed you a week ago." "There has not been any change made about your own arrangements? You will not be summoned to leave England sooner than you expected?" "I fear not, truly. Such chance is too good to befall me." Baffled so far, I changed my ground. I bethought myself to talk about the school and my scholars. "Mary Garrett's mother is better, and Mary came back to the school this morning, and I shall have 4 new girls next week from the Foundry Close. They would have come today but for the snow." "Truly, Mr. Oliver pays for 2. Does he?" "He means to give the whole school a treat at Christmas." I know. Was it your suggestion? No. Whose, then? His daughter's, I think. It is like her. She is so good-natured. Yes. Again came the blank of a pause. The clock struck 8 strokes. It aroused him. He uncrossed his legs, sat erect, turned to me. Leave your book a moment and come a little nearer the fire, he said. Wondering, and of my wonder finding no end, I complied. Half an hour ago, he pursued, I spoke of my impatience to hear the sequel of a tale. On reflection, I find the matter will be better managed by my assuming the narrator's part and converting you into a listener. Before commencing, it is but fair to warn you that the story will sound somewhat hackneyed in your ears, but stale details often regain a degree of freshness when they pass through new lips. For the rest, whether trite or novel, it is short. 20 years ago, a poor curate, never mind his name at this moment, fell in love with a rich man's daughter. She fell in love with him and married him, against the advice of all her friends, who consequently disowned her immediately after the wedding. Before 2 years passed, the rash pair were both dead and laid quietly side by side under one slab. I have seen their grave. It formed part of the pavement of a huge churchyard surrounding the grim, black old cathedral of an overgrown manufacturing town in Shire. They left a daughter, which, at its very birth, Charity received in her lap, cold as that of the snowdrift I almost stuck fast in tonight. Charity carried the friendless thing to the house of its rich maternal relations. It was reared by an aunt-in-law, called I come to names now Mrs. Reed of Gateshead. You start. Did you hear a noise? I dare say it is only a rat scrambling along the rafters of the adjoining schoolroom. It was a barn before I had it repaired and altered, and barns are generally haunted by rats. To proceed, Mrs. Reed kept the orphan 10 years. Whether it was happy or not with her, I cannot say, never having been told. But at the end of that time she transferred it to a place you know, being no other than Lowood School, where you so long recited yourself. It seems her career there was very honorable. From a pupil, she became a teacher, like yourself. Really, it strikes me there are parallel points in her history and yours. She left it to be a governess. There, again, your fates were analogous. She undertook the education of the ward of a certain Mr. Rochester. Mr. Rivers, I interrupted. I can guess your feelings, he said, but restrain them for a while. I have nearly finished. Hear me to the end. Of Mr. Rochester's character I know nothing, but the one fact that he professed to offer honorable marriage to this young girl, and that at the very altar she discovered he had a wife yet alive, though a lunatic. What his subsequent conduct and proposals were is a matter of pure conjecture. But when an event transpired which rendered inquiry after the governess necessary, it was discovered she was gone. No one could tell when, where, or how. She had left Thornfield Hall in the night. Every research after her course had been vain. The country had been scoured far and wide. No vestige of information could be gathered respecting her. Yet, that she should be found is become a matter of serious urgency. Advertisements have been put in all the papers. I myself have received a letter from one Mr. Briggs, a solicitor, communicating the details I have just imparted. Is it not an odd tale? Just tell me this, said I, and since you know so much, you surely can tell it me. What of Mr. Rochester? How and where is he? What is he doing? Is he well? I am ignorant of all concerning Mr. Rochester. The letter never mentions him, but to narrate the fraudulent and illegal attempt I have adverted to. You should rather ask the name of the governess, the nature of the event which requires her appearance. Did no one go to Thornfield Hall, then? Did no one see Mr. Rochester? I suppose not. But they wrote to him? Of course. And what did he say? Who has his letters? Mr. Briggs intimates that the answer to his application was not from Mr. Rochester, but from a lady. It is signed Alice Fairfax. I felt cold and dismayed. My worst fears then were probably true. He had in all probability left England and rushed in reckless desperation to some former haunt on the continent. And what opiate for his severe sufferings, what object for his strong passions had he sought there? I dared not answer the question. Oh, my poor master, once almost my husband, whom I had often called my dear Edward. He must have been a bad man, observed Mr. Rivers. You don't know him. Don't pronounce an opinion upon him, I said, with warmth. Very well, he answered quietly, and truly my head is otherwise occupied than with him. I have my tale to finish. Since you won't ask the governess's name, I must tell it of my own accord. Stay, I have it here. It is always more satisfactory to see important points written down, fairly committed to black and white. And the pocket-book was again deliberately produced, opened, sought through. From one of its compartments was extracted a shabby slip of paper, hastily torn off. I recognized in its texture and its stains of ultramarine, and lake, and vermilion, the ravished margin of the portrait cover. He got up, held it close to my eyes, and I read, traced in Indian ink, in my own handwriting, the words, Jane Eyre, the work doubtless of some moment of abstraction. Briggs wrote to me of a Jane Eyre. He said the advertisements demanded a Jane Eyre. I knew a Jane Elliot. I confess I had my suspicions, but it was only yesterday afternoon they were at once resolved into certainty. You own the name and renounce the alias. Yes, yes, but where is Mr. Briggs? He perhaps knows more of Mr. Rochester than you do. Briggs is in London. I should doubt his knowing anything at all about Mr. Rochester. It is not in Mr. Rochester he is interested. Meantime, you forget essential points in pursuing trifles. You do not inquire why Mr. Briggs sought after you, what he wanted with you. Well, what did he want? Merely to tell you that your uncle, Mr. Eyre of Madeira, is dead, that he has left you all his property, and that you are now rich, merely that, nothing more. I, rich, yes, you, rich, quite an heiress. Silence succeeded. You must prove your identity, of course, resumed St. John soon, a step which will offer no difficulties. You can then enter on immediate possession. Your fortune is vested in the English funds. Briggs has the will and the necessary documents. Here was a new card turned up. It is a fine thing, reader, to be lifted in a moment from indigence to wealth. A very fine thing, but not a matter one can comprehend or consequently enjoy all at once. And then there are other chances in life far more thrilling and rapture-giving. This is solid, an affair of the actual world, nothing ideal about it. All its associations are solid and sober, and its manifestations are the same. One does not jump and spring and shout hurrah at hearing one has got a fortune. One begins to consider responsibilities and to ponder business. On a base of steady satisfaction rise certain grave cares, and we contain ourselves and brood over our bliss with a solemn brow. Besides, the words legacy, bequest, go side by side with the words death, funeral. My uncle I had heard was dead, my only relative. Ever since being made aware of his existence, I had cherished the hope of one day seeing him. Now, I never should. And then this money came only to me, not to me and a rejoicing family, but to my isolated self. It was a grand boon doubtless, and independence would be glorious. Yes, I felt that. That thought swelled my heart. You unbend your forehead at last, said Mr. Rivers. I thought Medusa had looked at you, and that you were turning to stone. Perhaps now you will ask how much you are worth? How much am I worth? Oh, a trifle. Nothing of course to speak of. 20,000 pounds, I think they say. But what is that? 20,000 pounds. Here was a new stunner. I had been calculating on 4 or 5,000. This news actually took my breath for a moment. Mr. St. John, whom I had never heard laugh before, laughed now. Well, said he, if you had committed a murder, and I had told you your crime was discovered, you could scarcely look more aghast. It is a large sum. Don't you think there is a mistake? No mistake at all. Perhaps you have read the figures wrong. It may be 2,000. It is written in letters, not figures. 20,000. I again felt rather like an individual of but average gastronomical powers sitting down to feast alone at a table spread with provisions for 100. Mr. Rivers rose now and put his cloak on. If it were not such a very wild night, he said, I would send Hannah down to keep you company. You look too desperately miserable to be left alone. But Hannah, poor woman, could not stride the drifts so well as I. Her legs are not quite so long, so I must and leave you to your sorrows. Good night." He was lifting the latch. A sudden thought occurred to me. "Stop 1 minute," I cried. "Well, it puzzles me to know why Mr. Briggs wrote to you about me, or how he knew you, or could fancy that you, living in such an out-of-the-way place, had the power to aid in my discovery." "Oh, I am a clergyman," he said, "and the clergy are often appealed to about odd matters." Again the latch rattled. "No, that does not satisfy me," I exclaimed, and truly there was something in the hasty and unexplanatory reply which, instead of allaying, piqued my curiosity more than ever. "It is a very strange piece of business," I added. "I must know more about it another time." "No, tonight, tonight." And as he turned from the door, I placed myself between it and him. He looked rather embarrassed. "You certainly shall not go till you have told me all," I said. "I would rather not just now." "You shall. You must. I would rather Diana or Mary informed you." Of course these objections wrought my eagerness to a climax. Gratified it must be, and that without delay, and I told him so. "But I apprised you that I was a hard man," said he, "difficult to persuade. And I am a hard woman, impossible to put off." "And I am a hard woman, impossible to put off." And then he pursued, "I am cold, no fervor infects me, while I am hot, and fire dissolves ice. The blaze there has thawed all the snow from your cloak. By the same token, it has streamed onto my floor, and made it like a trampled street. As you hope ever to be forgiven, Mr. Rivers, the high crime and misdemeanor of spoiling the sanded kitchen, tell me what I wish to know." "Well, then," he said, "I yield, if not to your earnestness, to your perseverance, as stone is worn by continual dropping. Besides, you must know some day, as well now as later. Your name is Jane Eyre?" "Of course, that was all settled before. You are not, perhaps, aware that I am your namesake, that I was christened St. John Eyre Rivers?" "No, truly. I remember now seeing the letter E comprised in your initials written in books you have at different times lent me, but I never asked for what name it stood." "But what then?" "Surely," I stopped. I could not trust myself to entertain, much less to express, the thought that rushed upon me, that embodied itself, that, in a second, stood out a strong, solid probability. Circumstances knit themselves, fitted themselves, shot into order. The chain that had been lying hitherto a formless lump of links was drawn out straight. Every ring was perfect, the connection complete. I knew, by instinct, how the matter stood before St. John had said another word, but I cannot expect the reader to have the same intuitive perception, so I must repeat his explanation. My mother's name was Eyre. She had 2 brothers, one a clergyman, who married Miss Jane Reed, of Gateshead, the other, John Eyre, esque merchant, late of Funchal, Madeira. Mr. Briggs, being Mr. Eyre's solicitor, wrote to us last August to inform us of our uncle's death, and to say that he had left his property to his brother the clergyman's orphan daughter, overlooking us, in consequence of a quarrel never forgiven between him and my father. He wrote again a few weeks since, to intimate that the heiress was lost, and asking if we knew anything of her. A name casually written on a slip of paper has enabled me to find her out. You know the rest. Again he was going, but I set my back against the door. "Do let me speak," I said. "Let me have 1 moment to draw breath and reflect." I paused. He stood before me, hat in hand, looking composed enough. I resumed, "Your mother was my father's sister?" "Yes, my aunt." Consequently, he bowed. "My Uncle John was your Uncle John? You, Diana, and Mary are his sister's children, as I am his brother's child?" "Undeniably." "You 3, then, are my cousins, half our blood on each side flows from the same source." "We are cousins, yes." I surveyed him. It seemed I had found a brother, one I could be proud of, one I could love, and 2 sisters, whose qualities were such, that, when I knew them but as mere strangers, they had inspired me with genuine affection and admiration. The two girls, on whom, kneeling down on the wet ground and looking through the low, latticed window of Morehouse kitchen, I had gazed with so bitter a mixture of interest and despair, were my near kinswomen, and the young and stately gentleman who had found me almost dying at his threshold was my blood relation. Glorious discovery to a lonely wretch! This was wealth truly, wealth to the heart, a mine of pure, genial affections. This was a blessing, bright, vivid, and exhilarating, not like the ponderous gift of gold, rich and welcome enough in its way, but sobering from its weight. I now clapped my hands in sudden joy, my pulse bounded, my veins thrilled. "Oh, I am glad, I am glad," I exclaimed. "St. John smiled. "Did I not say you neglected essential points to pursue trifles?" he asked. "You were serious when I told you you had got a fortune, and now, for a matter of no moment, you are excited. What can you mean? It may be of no moment to you. You have sisters and don't care for a cousin, but I had nobody, and now 3 relations, or 2, if you don't choose to be counted, are born into my world full grown. I say again, I am glad. I walked fast through the room. I stopped, half suffocated with the thoughts that rose faster than I could receive, comprehend, settle them. Thoughts of what may, could, would, and should be, and that before long. I looked at the blank wall. It seemed a sky thick with ascending stars. Every one lit me to a purpose or delight. Those who had saved my life, whom, till this hour, I had loved barrenly, I could now benefit. They were under a yoke. I could free them. They were scattered. I could reunite them. The independence, the affluence which was mine, may be theirs too. Were we not for £20,000 shared equally would be 5,000 each. Justice, enough and to spare. Justice would be done, mutual happiness secured. Now the wealth did not weigh on me. Now it was not a mere bequest of coin. It was a legacy of life, hope, enjoyment. How I looked while these ideas were taking my spirit by storm, I cannot tell, but I perceived soon that Mr. Rivers had placed a chair behind me, and was gently attempting to make me sit down on it. He also advised me to be composed. I scorned the insinuation of helplessness and distraction, shook off his hand, and began to walk about again. "Write to Diana and Mary tomorrow," I said, "and tell them to come home directly." Diana said they would both consider themselves rich with £1,000, so with 5,000 they will do very well. "Tell me where I can get you a glass of water," said St. John. "You must really make an effort to tranquilize your feelings." "Nonsense! And what sort of an effect will the bequest have on you? Will it keep you in England, induce you to marry Miss Oliver, and settle down like an ordinary mortal? You wonder. Your head becomes confused. I have been too abrupt in communicating the news. It has excited you beyond your strength. Mr. Rivers, you quite put me out of patience. I am rational enough. It is you who misunderstand, or rather who affect to misunderstand. Perhaps, if you explained yourself a little more fully, I should comprehend better. Explain. What is there to explain? You cannot fail to see that £20,000, the sum in question, divided equally between the nephew and 3 nieces of our uncle, will give 5,000 to each. What I want is that you should write to your sisters and tell them of the fortune that has accrued to them. To you, you mean? I have intimated my view of the case. I am incapable of taking any other. I am not brutally selfish, blindly unjust, or fiendishly ungrateful. Besides, I am resolved I will have a home and connections. I like Moor House, and I will live at Moor House. I like Diana and Mary, and I will attach myself for life to Diana and Mary. It would please and benefit me to have £5,000. It would torment and oppress me to have 20,000, which, moreover, could never be mine in justice, though it may in law. I abandon to you, then, what is absolutely superfluous to me. Let there be no opposition, and no discussion about it. Let us agree amongst each other, and decide the point at once. This is acting on first impulses. You must take days to consider such a matter, before your word can be regarded as valid. Oh, if all you doubt is my sincerity, I am easy. You see the justice of the case. I do see a certain justice, but it is contrary to all custom. Besides, the entire fortune is your right. My uncle gained it by his own efforts. He was free to leave it to whom he would. He left it to you. After all, justice permits you to keep it. You may, with a clear conscience, consider it absolutely your own. With me, said I, it is fully as much a matter of feeling as of conscience. I must indulge my feelings. I so seldom have had an opportunity of doing so. Were you to argue, object, and annoy me for a year, I could not forego the delicious pleasure of which I have caught a glimpse, that of repaying, in part, a mighty obligation, and winning to myself lifelong friends. You think so now, rejoined St. John, because you do not know what it is to possess, nor consequently to enjoy wealth. You cannot form a notion of the importance £20,000 would give you, of the place it would enable you to take in society, of the prospects it would open to you. You cannot. And you, I interrupted, cannot at all imagine the craving I have for fraternal and sisterly love. I never had a home, I never had brothers or sisters. I must and will have them now. You are not reluctant to admit me and own me, are you? Jane, I will be your brother, my sisters will be your sisters, without stipulating for this sacrifice of your just rights. Brother, yes, at the distance of 1,000 leagues. Sisters, yes, slaving amongst strangers. I, wealthy, gorged with gold I never earned and do not merit. You, penniless. Famous equality and fraternization, close union, intimate attachment. But, Jane, your aspirations after family ties and domestic happiness may be realized otherwise than by the means you contemplate. You may marry. Nonsense, again. Marry. I don't want to marry, and never shall marry. That is saying too much. Such hazardous affirmations are a proof of the excitement under which you labor. It is not saying too much. I know what I feel, and how averse are my inclinations to the bare thought of marriage. No one would take me for love, and I will not be regarded in the light of a mere money speculation, and I do not want a stranger, unsympathizing, alien, different from me. I want my kindred, those with whom I have full fellow feeling. Say again you will be my brother. When you uttered the words I was satisfied, happy. Repeat them, if you can. Repeat them sincerely. I think I can. I know I have always loved my own sisters, and I know on what my affection for them is grounded, respect for their worth, and admiration of their talents. You too have principle and mind. Your tastes and habits resemble Diana's and Mary's. Your presence is always agreeable to me. In your conversation I have already for some time found a salutary solace. I feel I can easily and naturally make room in my heart for you, as my third and youngest sister. Thank you. That contents me for tonight. Now you had better go, for, if you stay longer, you will perhaps irritate me afresh by some mistrustful scruple. And the school, Miss Eyre, it must now be shut up, I suppose? No, I will retain my post of mistress till you get a substitute. He smiled approbation. We shook hands, and he took leave. I need not narrate in detail the further struggles I had and arguments I used to get matters regarding the legacy settled as I wished. My task was a very hard one, but, as I was absolutely resolved, as my cousin saw at length that my mind was really and immutably fixed on making a just division of the property, as they must in their own hearts have felt the equity of the intention, and must, besides, have been innately conscious that in my place they would have done precisely what I wished to do, they yielded at length so far as to consent to put the affair to arbitration. The judges chosen were Mr. Oliver and an able lawyer. Both coincided in my opinion. I carried my point. The instruments of transfer were drawn out. St. Chapter Roman 34. It was near Christmas by the time all was settled. The season of general holiday approached. I now closed Morton School, taking care that the parting should not be barren on my side. Good fortune opens the hand as well as the heart wonderfully, and to give somewhat, when we have largely received, is but to afford a vent to the unusual ebullition of the sensations. I had long felt with pleasure that many of my rustic scholars liked me, and when we parted, that consciousness was confirmed. They manifested their affection plainly and strongly. Deep was my gratification to find I had really a place in their unsophisticated hearts. I promised them that never a week should pass in future that I did not visit them and give them an hour's teaching in their school. Mr. Rivers came up as having seen the classes, now numbering 60 girls, file out before me, and locked the door. I stood with the key in my hand, exchanging a few words of special farewell with some half-dozen of my best scholars, as decent, respectable, modest, and well-informed young women as could be found in the ranks of the British peasantry. And that is saying a great deal, for after all, the British peasantry are the best taught, best mannered, most self-respecting of any in Europe. Since those days I have seen Paysons and Buchanan, and the best of them seemed to me ignorant, coarse, and besotted, compared with my Morton girls. Do you consider you have got your reward for a season of exertion? Asked Mr. Rivers when they were gone. Does not the consciousness of having done some real good in your day and generation give pleasure? Doubtless. And you have only toiled a few months. Would not a life devoted to the task of regenerating your race be well spent? Yes, I said, but I could not go on forever so. I want to enjoy my own faculties as well as to cultivate those of other people. I must enjoy them now. Don't recall either my mind or body to the school. I am out of it and disposed for full holiday. He looked grave. What now? What sudden eagerness is this you evince? What are you going to do? To be active as I can. And first I must beg you to set Hannah at liberty, and get somebody else to wait on you. Do you want her? Yes, to go with me to Moor House. Diana and Mary will be at home in a week, and I want to have everything in order against their arrival. I understand. I thought you were for flying off on some excursion. It is better so. Hannah shall go with you. Tell her to be ready by tomorrow then, and here is the schoolroom key. I will give you the key of my cottage in the morning. He took it. You give it up very gleefully, said he. I don't quite understand your light-heartedness, because I cannot tell what employment you propose to yourself as a substitute for the one you are relinquishing. What aim, what purpose, what ambition in life have you now? My first aim will be to clean down. Do you comprehend the full force of the expression? To clean down Moor House from chamber to cellar, my next to rub it up with beeswax, oil, and an indefinite number of cloths, till it glitters again, my third, to arrange every chair, table, bed, carpet, with mathematical precision. Afterwards I shall go near to ruin you in coals and peat to keep up good fires in every room. And lastly, the 2 days preceding that on which your sisters are expected will be devoted by Hannah and me to such a beating of eggs, sorting of currants, grating of spices, compounding of Christmas cakes, chopping up of materials for mince pies, and solemnizing of other culinary rites, as words can convey but an inadequate notion of to the uninitiated like you. My purpose, in short, is to have all things in an absolutely perfect state of readiness for Diana and Mary before next Thursday, and my ambition is to give them a beau ideal of a welcome when they come. Son. John smiled slightly, still he was dissatisfied. It is all very well for the present, said he, but seriously, I trust that when the first flush of vivacity is over, you will look a little higher than domestic endearments and household joys. The best things the world has, I interrupted. No, Jane, no. This world is not the scene of fruition. Do not attempt to make it so, nor of rest. Do not turn slothful. I mean, on the contrary, to be busy. Jane, I excuse you for the present. 2 months' grace I allow you for the full enjoyment of your new position, and for pleasing yourself with this late-found charm of relationship. But then, I hope you will begin to look beyond Moor House and Morton and sisterly society and the selfish calm and sensual comfort of civilized affluence. I hope your energies will then once more trouble you with their strength. I looked at him with surprise. Son, John, I said, I think you are almost wicked to talk so. I am disposed to be as content as a queen, and you try to stir me up to restlessness. To what end? To the end of turning to profit the talents which God has committed to your keeping, and of which he will surely one day demand a strict account. Jane, I shall watch you closely and anxiously, I warn you of that, and try to restrain the disproportionate fervor with which you throw yourself into commonplace home pleasures. Don't cling so tenaciously to ties of the flesh. Save your constancy and ardor for an adequate cause, forbear to waste them on trite transient objects. Do you hear, Jane? Yes, just as if you were speaking Greek. I feel I have adequate cause to be happy, and I will be happy. Goodbye. Happy at Moor House I was, and hard I worked. And so did Hannah. She was charmed to see how jovial I could be amidst the bustle of a house turned topsy-turvy, how I could brush, and dust, and clean, and cook. And really, after a day or two of confusion worse confounded, it was delightful by degrees to invoke order from the chaos ourselves had made. I had previously taken a journey to S. to purchase some new furniture, my cousins having given me carte blanche to effect what alterations I pleased, and a sum having been set aside for that purpose. The ordinary sitting room and bedrooms I left much as they were, for I knew Diana and Mary would derive more pleasure from seeing again the old homely tables and chairs and beds than from the spectacle of the smartest innovations. Still, some novelty was necessary to give to their return the piquancy with which I wished it to be invested. Dark handsome new carpets and curtains, an arrangement of some carefully selected antique ornaments in porcelain and bronze, new coverings and mirrors and dressing cases for the toilet tables answered the end. They looked fresh without being glaring. A spare parlor and bedroom I refurnished entirely, with old mahogany and crimson upholstery. I laid canvas on the passage and carpets on the stairs. When all was finished, I thought Moor House as complete a model of bright, modest snugness within as it was, at the season, a specimen of wintry waste and desert dreariness without. The eventful Thursday at length came. They were expected about dark, and before dusk fires were lit upstairs and below. The kitchen was in perfect trim. Hannah and I were dressed, and all was in readiness. St. John arrived first. I had entreated him to keep quite clear of the house till everything was arranged, and, truly, the bare idea of the commotion, at once sordid and trivial, going on within its walls sufficed to scare him to estrangement. He found me in the kitchen, watching the progress of certain cakes for tea, then baking. Approaching the hearth, he asked if I was at last satisfied with housemaid's work. I answered by inviting him to accompany me on a general inspection of the result of my labors. With some difficulty, I got him to make the tour of the house. He just looked in at the doors I opened, and, when he had wandered upstairs and downstairs, he said I must have gone through a great deal of fatigue and trouble to have effected such considerable changes in so short a time. But not a syllable did he utter indicating pleasure in the improved aspect of his abode. This silence damped me. I thought perhaps the alterations had disturbed some old associations he valued. I inquired whether this was the case, no doubt in a somewhat crestfallen tone. Not at all. He had, on the contrary, remarked that I had scrupulously respected every association. He feared, truly, I must have bestowed more thought on the matter than it was worth. How many minutes, for instance, had I devoted to studying the arrangement of this very room? By the by, could I tell him where such a book was? I showed him the volume on the shelf. He took it down, and withdrawing to his accustomed window recess, he began to read it. Now, I did not like this, reader. St. John was a good man, but I began to feel he had spoken truth of himself when he said he was hard and cold. The humanities and amenities of life had no attraction for him, its peaceful enjoyments no charm. Literally, he lived only to aspire after what was good and great, certainly, but still he would never rest, nor approve of others resting round him. As I looked at his lofty forehead, still and pale as a white stone, at his fine lineaments fixed in study, I comprehended all at once that he would hardly make a good husband, that it would be a trying thing to be his wife. I understood, as by inspiration, the nature of his love for Miss Oliver. I agreed with him that it was but a love of the senses. I comprehended how he should despise himself for the feverish influence it exercised over him, how he should wish to stifle and destroy it, how he should mistrust its ever conducting permanently to his happiness or hers. I saw he was of the material from which nature hews her heroes, Christian and pagan, her lawgivers, her statesmen, her conquerors, a steadfast bulwark for great interests to rest upon, but, at the fireside, too often a cold cumbrous column, gloomy and out of place. This parlor is not his sphere, I reflected. the Himalayan ridge or kaffir bush, evening the plague-cursed Guinea coast swamp would suit him better. Well may he eschew the calm of domestic life. It is not his element. There his faculties stagnate. They cannot develop or appear to advantage. It is in scenes of strife and danger, where courage is proved, and energy exercised, and fortitude tasked, that he will speak and move, the leader and superior. A merry child would have the advantage of him on this hearth. He is right to choose a missionary's career. I see it now. They are coming. They are coming, cried Hannah, throwing open the parlor door. At the same moment old Carlo barked joyfully. Out I ran. It was now dark, but a rumbling of wheels was audible. Hannah soon had a lantern lit. The vehicle had stopped at the wicket. The driver opened the door. First one well-known form, then another, stepped out. In a minute I had my face under their bonnets, in contact first with Mary's soft cheek, then with Diana's flowing curls. They laughed, kissed me, then Hannah patted Carlo, who was half wild with delight, asked eagerly if all was well, and being assured in the affirmative, hastened into the house. They were stiff with their long and jolting drive from Whitcross, and chilled with the frosty night air, but their pleasant countenances expanded to the cheerful firelight. While the driver and Hannah brought in the boxes, they demanded St. John. At this moment he advanced from the parlor. They both threw their arms round his neck at once. He gave each one quiet kiss, said in a low tone a few words of welcome, stood a while to be talked to, and then, intimating that he supposed they would soon rejoin him in the parlor, withdrew there as to a place of refuge. I had lit their candles to go upstairs, but Diana had first to give hospitable orders respecting the driver. This done, both followed me. They were delighted with the renovation and decorations of their rooms, with the new drapery and fresh carpets and rich tinted china vases. They expressed their gratification ungrudgingly. I had the pleasure of feeling that my arrangements met their wishes exactly, and that what I had done added a vivid charm to their joyous return home. Sweet was that evening. My cousins, full of exhilaration, were so eloquent in narrative and comment that their fluency covered St. John's taciturnity. He was sincerely glad to see his sisters, but in their glow of fervor and flow of joy he could not sympathize. The event of the day, that is, the return of Diana and Mary, pleased him, but the accompaniments of that event, the glad tumult, the garrulous glee of reception irked him. I saw he wished the calmer tomorrow was come. In the very meridian of the night's enjoyment, about an hour after tea, a rap was heard at the door. Hannah entered with the intimation that a poor lad was come, at that unlikely time, to fetch Mr. Rivers to see his mother, who was drawing away. Where does she live, Hannah? Clear up at Whitcross Brow, almost 4 miles off, and moor and moss all the way. Tell him I will go. I'm sure, sir, you had better not. It's the worst road to travel after dark that can be. There's no track at all over the bog. And then it is such a bitter night, the keenest wind you ever felt. You had better send word, sir, that you will be there in the morning. But he was already in the passage, putting on his cloak, and without one objection, one murmur, he departed. It was then 9 o'clock. He did not return till midnight. Starved and tired enough he was, but he looked happier than when he set out. He had performed an act of duty, made an exertion, felt his own strength to do and deny, and was on better terms with himself. I am afraid the whole of the ensuing week tried his patience. It was Christmas week. We took to no settled employment, but spent it in a sort of merry domestic dissipation. The air of the moors, the freedom of home, the dawn of prosperity, acted on Diana and Mary's spirits like some life-giving elixir. They were gay from morning till noon, and from noon till night. They could always talk, and their discourse, witty, pithy, original, had such charms for me that I preferred listening to, and sharing in it, to doing anything else. St. John did not rebuke our vivacity, but he escaped from it. He was seldom in the house. His parish was large, the population scattered, and he found daily business in visiting the sick and poor in its different districts. One morning at breakfast, Diana, after looking a little pensive for some minutes, asked him if his plans were yet unchanged. Unchanged and unchangeable, was the reply, and he proceeded to inform us that his departure from England was now definitively fixed for the ensuing year. And Rossem and Oliver, suggested Mary, the words seeming to escape her lips involuntarily, for no sooner had she uttered them than she made a gesture as if wishing to recall them. St. John had a book in his hand. It was his unsocial custom to read at meals. He closed it and looked up. Rossum and Oliver, said he, is about to be married to Mr. Granby, one of the best connected and most estimable residents in S. Grandson and heir to Sir Frederick Granby. I had the intelligence from her father yesterday. His sisters looked at each other and at me. We all three looked at him. He was serene as glass. The match must have been got up hastily, said Diana. They cannot have known each other long, but 2 months. They met in October at the county ball at S. But where there are no obstacles to a union, as in the present case, where the connection is in every point desirable, delays are unnecessary. They will be married as soon as S. place, which Sir Frederick gives up to them, can be refitted for their reception. The first time I found St. John alone after this communication, I felt tempted to inquire if the event distressed him, but he seemed so little to need sympathy that, so far from venturing to offer him more, I experienced some shame at the recollection of what I had already hazarded. Besides, I was out of practice in talking to him. His reserve was again frozen over, and my frankness was congealed beneath it. He had not kept his promise of treating me like his sisters. He continually made little chilling differences between us, which did not at all tend to the development of cordiality. In short, now that I was acknowledged his kinswoman, and lived under the same roof with him, I felt the distance between us to be far greater than when he had known me only as the village schoolmistress. When I remembered how far I had once been admitted to his confidence, I could hardly comprehend his present frigidity. Such being the case, I felt not a little surprised when he raised his head suddenly from the desk over which he was stooping, and said, "You see, Jane, the battle is fought and the victory won." Startled at being thus addressed, I did not immediately reply. After a moment's hesitation I answered, "But are you sure you are not in the position of those conquerors whose triumphs have cost them too dear? Would not such another ruin you? I think not, and if I were, it does not much signify. I shall never be called upon to contend for such another. The event of the conflict is decisive. My way is now clear. I thank God for it." So saying, he returned to his papers and his silence. As our mutual happiness, i.e., Diana's, Mary's, and mine settled into a quieter character, and we resumed our usual habits and regular studies, St. John stayed more at home. He sat with us in the same room, sometimes for hours together. While Mary drew, Diana pursued a course of encyclopic reading she had to my awe and amazement undertaken, and I fagged away at Derman. He pondered a mystic lore of his own, that of some Eastern tongue, the acquisition of which he thought necessary to his plans. Thus engaged, he appeared, sitting in his own recess, quiet and absorbed enough, but that blue eye of his had a habit of leaving the outlandish-looking grammar, and wandering over, and sometimes fixing upon us, his fellow students, with a curious intensity of observation. If caught, it would be instantly withdrawn, yet ever and soon it returned searchingly to our table. I wondered what it meant. I wondered, too, at the punctual satisfaction he never failed to exhibit on an occasion that seemed to me of small moment, namely, my weekly visit to Morton School, and still more was I puzzled when, if the day was unfavorable, if there was snow, or rain, or high wind, and his sisters urged me not to go, he would invariably make light of their solicitude, and encourage me to accomplish the task without regard to the elements. "Jane is not such a weakling as you would make her," he would say. "She can bear a mountain blast, or a shower, or a few flakes of snow, as well as any of us. Her constitution is both sound and elastic, better calculated to endure variations of climate than many more robust." And when I returned, sometimes a good deal tired and not a little weather-beaten, I never dared complain, because I saw that to murmur would be to vex him. On all occasions fortitude pleased him. The reverse was a special annoyance. One afternoon, however, I got leave to stay at home, because I really had a cold. His sisters were gone to Morton in my stead. I sat reading Schiller, he deciphering his crabbed oriental scrolls. As I exchanged a translation for an exercise, I happened to look his way. There I found myself under the influence of the ever-watchful blue eye. How long it had been searching me through, and over, I cannot tell, so keen was it, and yet so cold. I felt for the moment superstitious, as if I were sitting in the room with something uncanny. Jane, what are you doing? Learning German. I want you to give up German and learn Hindustani. You are not in earnest? In such earnest that I must have it so, and I will tell you why. He then went on to explain that Hindustani was the language he was himself at present studying, that, as he advanced, he was apt to forget the commencement, that it would assist him greatly to have a pupil with whom he may again and again go over the elements, and so fix them thoroughly in his mind, that his choice had hovered for some time between me and his sisters, but that he had fixed on me because he saw I could sit at a task the longest of the three. Would I do him this favor? I should not, perhaps, have to make the sacrifice long, as it wanted now barely 3 months to his departure. St. John was not a man to be lightly refused. You felt that every impression made on him, either for pain or pleasure, was deep-raved and permanent. I consented. When Diana and Mary returned, the former found her scholar transferred from her to her brother. She laughed, and both she and Mary agreed that St. John should never have persuaded them to such a step. He answered quietly, I know it. I found him a very patient, very forbearing, and yet an exacting master. He expected me to do a great deal, and when I fulfilled his expectations, he, in his own way, fully testified his approbation. By degrees, he acquired a certain influence over me that took away my liberty of mind. His praise and notice were more restraining than his indifference. I could no longer talk or laugh freely when he was by, because a tiresomely importunate instinct reminded me that vivacity, at least in me, was distasteful to him. I was so fully aware that only serious moods and occupations were acceptable, that in his presence every effort to sustain or follow any other became vain. I fell under a freezing spell. When he said, go, I went, come, I came, do this, I did it. But I did not love my servitude. I wished, many a time, he had continued to neglect me. One evening when, at bedtime, his sisters and I stood round him, bidding him good night, he kissed each of them, as was his custom, and, as was equally his custom, he gave me his hand. Diana, who chanced to be in a frolicsome humor, she was not painfully controlled by his will, for hers, in another way, was as strong, exclaimed St. John, you used to call Jane your third sister, but you don't treat her as such. You should kiss her too. She pushed me towards him. I thought Diana very provoking, and felt uncomfortably confused. And while I was thus thinking and feeling, St. John bent his head, his Greek face was brought to a level with mine, his eyes questioned my eyes piercingly, he kissed me. There are no such things as marble kisses or ice kisses, or I should say my ecclesiastical cousin's salute belonged to one of these classes. But there may be experiment kisses, and his was an experiment kiss. When given, he viewed me to learn the result. It was not striking. I am sure I did not blush. Perhaps I may have turned a little pale, for I felt as if this kiss were a seal affixed to my fetters. He never omitted the ceremony afterwards, and the gravity and quiescence with which I underwent it seemed to invest it for him with a certain charm. As for me, I daily wished more to please him, but to do so, I felt daily more and more that I must disown half my nature, stifle half my faculties, wrest my tastes from their original bent, force myself to the adoption of pursuits for which I had no natural vocation. He wanted to train me to an elevation I could never reach. It racked me hourly to aspire to the standard he uplifted. The thing was as impossible as to mold my irregular features to his correct and classic pattern, to give to my changeable green eyes the sea-blue tint and solemn luster of his own. Not his ascendancy alone, however, held me in thrall at present. Of late it had been easy enough for me to look sad. A cankering evil sat at my heart, and drained my happiness at its source, the evil of suspense. Perhaps you think I had forgotten Mr. Rochester, reader, amidst these changes of place and fortune. Not for a moment. His idea was still with me, because it was not a vapor sunshine could disperse, nor a sand-traced effigy storms could wash away. It was a name graven on a tablet, fated to last as long as the marble it inscribed. The craving to know what had become of him followed me everywhere. When I was at Morton, I re-entered my cottage every evening to think of that, and now at Moor House, I sought my bedroom each night to brood over it. In the course of my necessary correspondence with Mr. Briggs about the will, I had inquired if he knew anything of Mr. Rochester's present residence and state of health, but as St. John had conjectured he was quite ignorant of all concerning him. I then wrote to Mrs. Fairfax, entreating information on the subject. I had calculated with certainty on this step answering my end. I felt sure it would elicit an early answer. I was astonished when a fortnight passed without reply, but when 2 months wore away, and day after day the post arrived and brought nothing for me, I fell a prey to the keenest anxiety. I wrote again. There was a chance of my first letter having missed. Renewed hope followed renewed effort. It shone like the former for some weeks, then, like it faded, flickered, not a line, not a word reached me. When half a year wasted in vain expectancy, my hope died out, and then I felt dark truly. A fine spring shone round me, which I could not enjoy. Summer approached. Diana tried to cheer me. She said I looked ill, and wished to accompany me to the seaside. This St. John opposed. He said I did not want dissipation. I wanted employment. My present life was too purposeless. I required an aim. And, I suppose, by way of supplying deficiencies, he prolonged still further my lessons in Hindustani, and grew more urgent in requiring their accomplishment, and I, like a fool, never thought of resisting him. I could not resist him. One day I had come to my studies in lower spirits than usual. The ebb was occasioned by a poignantly felt disappointment. Hannah had told me in the morning there was a letter for me, and when I went down to take it, almost certain that the long-looked-for tidings were vouchsafed me at last, I found only an unimportant note from Mr. Briggs on business. The bitter check had wrung from me some tears, and now, as I sat poring over the crabbed characters and flourishing tropes of an Indian scribe, my eyes filled again. Son, John called me to his side to read. In attempting to do this my voice failed me. Words were lost in sobs. He and I were the only occupants of the parlor. Diana was practicing her music in the drawing-room. Mary was gardening. It was a very fine May day, clear, sunny, and breezy. My companion expressed no surprise at this emotion, nor did he question me as to its cause. He only said, "We will wait a few minutes, Jane, till you are more composed." And while I smothered the paroxysm with all haste, he sat calm and patient, leaning on his desk, and looking like a physician watching with the eye of science an expected and fully understood crisis in a patient's malady. Having stifled my sobs, wiped my eyes, and muttered something about not being very well that morning, I resumed my task, and succeeded in completing it. Son, John put away my books and his, locked his desk, and said, "Now, Jane, you shall take a walk, and with me. I will call Diana and Mary. No, I want only one companion this morning, and that must be you. Put on your things, go out by the kitchen door, take the road towards the head of Marsh Glen. I will join you in a moment. I know no medium. I never in my life have known any medium in my dealings with positive, hard characters, antagonistic to my own, between absolute submission and determined revolt. I have always faithfully observed the one, up to the very moment of bursting, sometimes with volcanic vehemence, into the other, and as neither present circumstances warranted, nor my present mood inclined me to mutiny, I observed careful obedience to St. John's directions, and in 10 minutes I was treading the wild track of the glen, side by side with him. The breeze was from the west. It came over the hills, sweet with scents of heath and rush. The sky was of stainless blue. The stream descending the ravine, swelled with past spring rains, poured along plentiful and clear, catching golden gleams from the sun and sapphire tints from the firmament. As we advanced and left the track, We trod a soft turf, mossy fine and emerald green, minutely enameled with a tiny white flower, and spangled with a star-like yellow blossom. The hills, meantime, shut us quite in, for the glen, towards its head, wound to their very core. "Let us rest here," said St. John, as we reached the first stragglers of a battalion of rocks, guarding a sort of pass, beyond which the beck rushed down a waterfall, and where, still a little farther, the mountain shook off turf and flower, had only heath for raiment and crag for gem, where it exaggerated the wild to the savage, and exchanged the fresh for the frowning, where it guarded the forlorn hope of solitude, and a last refuge for silence. I took a seat. St. John stood near me. He looked up the pass and down the hollow. His glance wandered away with the stream, and returned to traverse the unclouded heaven which colored it. He removed his hat, let the breeze stir his hair and kiss his brow. He seemed in communion with the genius of the haunt. With his eye he bade farewell to something. "And I shall see it again," he said aloud, "in dreams when I sleep by the Ganges, and again in a more remote hour, when another slumber overcomes me, on the shore of a darker stream." Strange words of a strange love, an austere patriot's passion for his fatherland. He sat down. For half an hour we never spoke, neither he to me nor I to him. That interval past, he recommenced. "Jane, I go in 6 weeks. I have taken my berth in an East Indiaman which sails on the 20th of June. God will protect you, for you have undertaken his work." I answered. "Yes," said he. "There is my glory and joy. I am the servant of an infallible master. I am not going out under human guidance, subject to the defective laws and erring control of my feeble fellow-worms. My king, my lawgiver, my captain, is the all-perfect. It seems strange to me that all round me do not burn to enlist under the same banner, to join in the same enterprise. All have not your powers, and it would be folly for the feeble to wish to march with the strong. I do not speak to the feeble, or think of them. I address only such as are worthy of the work, and competent to accomplish it. Those are few in number and difficult to discover. You say truly, but when found, it is right to stir them up, to urge and exhort them to the effort, to show them what their gifts are, and why they were given, to speak heaven's message in their ear, to offer them, direct from God, a place in the ranks of his chosen. If they are really qualified for the task, will not their own hearts be the first to inform them of it? I felt as if an awful charm was framing round and gathering over me. I trembled to hear some fatal word spoken which would at once declare and rivet the spell. "And what does your heart say?" demanded St. John. "My heart is mute, my heart is mute," I answered, struck and thrilled. "Then I must speak for it," continued the deep, relentless voice. "Jane, come with me to India. Come as my helpmeet and fellow-laborer." The glen and sky spun round, the hills heaved. It was as if I had heard a summons from heaven, as if a visionary messenger, like him of Macedonia, had announced, "Come over and help us." But I was no apostle. I could not behold the herald. I could not receive his call. "Oh, St. John," I cried, "have some mercy." I appealed to one who, in the discharge of what he believed his duty, knew neither mercy nor remorse. He continued, "God and nature intended you for a missionary's wife. It is not personal, but mental endowments they have given you. You are formed for labor, not for love. A missionary's wife you shall be. You shall be mine. I claim you, not for my pleasure, but for my sovereign's service. I am not fit for it. I have no vocation," I said. He had calculated on these first objections. He was not irritated by them. Truly, as he leaned back against the crag behind him, folded his arms on his chest, and fixed his countenance, I saw he was prepared for a long and trying opposition, and had taken in a stock of patience to last him to its close, resolved, however, that that close should be conquest for him. "Humility, Jane," said he, "is the groundwork of Christian virtues. You say right that you are not fit for the work. Who is fit for it, or who, that ever was truly called, believed himself worthy of the summons? I, for instance, am but dust and ashes. With St. Paul, I acknowledge myself the chiefest of sinners, but I do not suffer the sense of my personal vileness to daunt me. I know my leader, that he is just as well as mighty, and while he has chosen a feeble instrument to perform a great task, he will, from the boundless stores of his providence, supply the inadequacy of the means to the end. Think like me, Jane, trust like me. It is the rock of ages I ask you to lean on. Do not doubt, but it will bear the weight of your human weakness. I do not understand a missionary life. I have never studied missionary labors. There I, humble as I am, can give you the aid you want. I can set you your task from hour to hour, stand by you always, help you from moment to moment. This I could do in the beginning. Soon, for I know your powers, you would be as strong and apt as myself, and would not require my help. But my powers, where are they for this undertaking? I do not feel them. Nothing speaks or stirs in me while you talk. I am sensible of no light kindling, no life quickening, no voice counseling or cheering. Oh, I wish I could make you see how much my mind is at this moment like a rayless dungeon, with one shrinking fear fettered in its depths, the fear of being persuaded by you to attempt what I cannot accomplish. I have an answer for you, hear it. I have watched you ever since we first met. I have made you my study for 10 months. I have proved you in that time by sundry tests, and what have I seen and elicited? In the village school I found you could perform well, punctually, uprightly, labor uncongenial to your habits and inclinations. I saw you could perform it with capacity and tact. You could win while you controlled. In the calm with which you learnt you had become suddenly rich. I read a mind clear of the vice of Damas. Lucre had no undue power over you. In the resolute readiness with which you cut your wealth into 4 shares, keeping but one to yourself, and relinquishing the 3 others to the claim of abstract justice, I recognized a soul that reveled in the flame and excitement of sacrifice, in the tractability with which, at my wish, you forsook a study in which you were interested, and adopted another because it interested me, in the untiring assiduity with which you have since persevered in it, in the unflagging energy and unshaken temper with which you have met its difficulties. I acknowledge the compliment of the qualities I seek. Jane, you are docile, diligent, disinterested, faithful, constant, and courageous, very gentle, and very heroic. Cease to mistrust yourself. I can trust you unreservedly. As a conductress of Indian schools and a helper amongst Indian women, your assistance will be to me invaluable. My iron shroud contracted round me, persuasion advanced with slow, sure step. Shut my eyes as I would, these last words of his succeeded in making the way, which had seemed blocked up, comparatively clear. My work, which had appeared so vague, so hopelessly diffuse, condensed itself as he proceeded and assumed a definite form under his shaping hand. He waited for an answer. I demanded a quarter of an hour to think, before I again hazarded a reply. Very willingly, he rejoined, and rising, he strode a little distance up the pass, threw himself down on a swell of heath, and there lay still. He threw himself down on a swell of heath, and there lay still. I can do what he wants me to do. I am forced to see and acknowledge that I meditated, that is, if life be spared me. But I feel mine is not the existence to be long protracted under an Indian sun. What then? He does not care for that. When my time came to die, he would resign me, in all serenity and sanctity, to the God who gave me. The case is very plain before me. In leaving England, I should leave a loved but empty land. Mr. Rochester is not there, and if he were, what can that ever be to me? My business is to live without him now. Nothing so absurd, so weak as to drag on from day to day, as if I were waiting some impossible change in circumstances, which may reunite me to him. Of course, as St. John once said, I must seek another interest in life to replace the one lost. Is not the occupation he now offers me truly the most glorious man can adopt or God assign? Is it not, by its noble cares and sublime results, the one best calculated to fill the void left by upturned affections and demolished hopes? I believe I must say yes, and yet I shudder. Alas, if I join St. John, I abandon half myself. If I go to India, I go to premature death. And how will the interval between leaving England for India and India for the grave be filled? Oh, I know well. That, too, is very clear to my vision. by straining to satisfy St. John till my sinews ache, I shall satisfy him, to the finest central point and farthest outward circle of his expectations. If I do go with him, if I do make the sacrifice he urges, I will make it absolutely. I will throw all on the altar, heart, vitals, the entire victim. He will never love me, but he shall approve me. I will show him energies he has not yet seen, resources he has never suspected. Yes, I can work as hard as he can, and with as little grudging consent, then, to his demand is possible, but for one item, one dreadful item. It is that he asks me to be his wife, and has no more of a husband's heart for me than that frowning giant of a rock, down which the stream is foaming in over their gorge. He prizes me as a soldier would a good weapon, and that is all. Unmarried to him, this would never grieve me. But can I let him complete his calculations, coolly put into practice his plans, go through the wedding ceremony? Can I receive from him the bridal ring, endure all the forms of love which I doubt not he would scrupulously observe and know that the spirit was quite absent? Can I bear the consciousness that every endearment he bestows is a sacrifice made on principle? No, such a martyrdom would be monstrous. I will never undergo it. As his sister, I may accompany him, not as his wife. I will tell him so. I looked towards the knoll. There he lay, still as a prostrate column, his face turned to me, his eye beaming watchful and keen. He started to his feet and approached me. I am ready to go to India, if I may go free. Your answer requires a commentary, he said. It is not clear. You have hitherto been my adopted brother, I, your adopted sister. Let us continue as such. You and I had better not marry. He shook his head. Adopted fraternity will not do in this case. If you were my real sister, it would be different. I should take you, and seek no wife. But as it is, either our union must be consecrated and sealed by marriage, or it cannot exist. Practical obstacles oppose themselves to any other plan. Do you not see it, Jane? Consider a moment. Your strong sense will guide you. I did consider, and still my sense, such as it was, directed me only to the fact that we did not love each other as man and wife should, and therefore it inferred we ought not to marry. I said so. St. John, I returned, I regard you as a brother, you me as a sister, so let us continue. We cannot, he answered, with short, sharp determination. It would not do. You have said you will go with me to India. Remember, you have said that. Conditionally. Well, to the main point, the departure with me from England, the cooperation with me in my future labors, you do not object. You have already as good as put your hand to the plough. You are too consistent to withdraw it. You have but one end to keep in view. How the work you have undertaken can best be done. Simplify your complicated interests, feelings, thoughts, wishes, aims, merge all considerations in one purpose, that of fulfilling with effect, with power, the mission of your great master. To do so, you must have a coadjutor, not a brother, that is a loose tie, but a husband. I, too, do not want a sister. A sister may any day be taken from me. I want a wife, the sole helpmeet I can influence efficiently in life, and retain absolutely till death. I shuddered as he spoke. I felt his influence in my marrow, his hold on my limbs. Seek one elsewhere than in me, St. John. Seek one fitted to you, one fitted to my purpose. You mean, fitted to my vocation. Again I tell you, it is not the insignificant private individual, the mere man, with the man's selfish senses, I wish to mate. It is the missionary, and I will give the missionary my energies. It is all he wants, but not myself. That would be only adding the husk and shell to the kernel. For them he has no use. I retain them. You cannot, you ought not. Do you think God will be satisfied with half an oblation? Will he accept a mutilated sacrifice? It is the cause of God I advocate. It is under his standard I enlist you. I cannot accept on his behalf a divided allegiance. It must be entire. Oh, I will give my heart to God, I said. You do not want it. I will not swear, reader, that there was not something of repressed sarcasm both in the tone in which I uttered the sentence and in the feeling that accompanied it. I had silently feared St. John till now, because I had not understood him. He had held me in awe, because he had held me in doubt. How much of him was saint, how much mortal, I could not heretofore tell, but revelations were being made in this conference. The analysis of his nature was proceeding before my eyes. I saw his fallibilities, I comprehended them. I understood that, sitting there where I did, on the bank of heath, and with that handsome form before me, I sat at the feet of a man, erring as I. The veil fell from his hardness and despotism. Having felt in him the presence of these qualities, I felt his imperfection and took courage. I was with an equal, one with whom I may argue, one whom, if I saw good, I may resist. He was silent after I had uttered the last sentence, and I soon risked an upward glance at his countenance. His eye, bent on me, expressed at once stern surprise and keen inquiry. Is she sarcastic? And sarcastic to me, it seemed to say, "What does this signify? Do not let us forget that this is a solemn matter," he said, "before long, one of which we may neither think nor talk lightly without sin. I trust, Jane, you are in earnest when you say you will serve your heart to God. It is all I want. Once wrench your heart from man, and fix it on your Maker. The advancement of that Maker's spiritual kingdom on earth will be your chief delight and endeavor. You will be ready to do at once whatever furthers that end. You will see what impetus would be given to your efforts and mine by our physical and mental union in marriage, the only union that gives a character of permanent conformity to the destinies and designs of human beings, and passing over all minor caprices, all trivial difficulties and delicacies of feeling, all scruple about the degree, kind, strength, or tenderness of mere personal inclination, you will hasten to enter into that union at once. Shall I? I said briefly, and I looked at his features, beautiful in their harmony, but strangely formidable in their still severity, at his brow, commanding but not open, at his eyes, bright and deep and searching, but never soft, at his tall imposing figure, and fancied myself in idea his wife. Oh, it would never do. As his curate, his comrade, all would be right. I would cross oceans with him in that capacity, toil under eastern suns, in Asian deserts with him in that office, admire and emulate his courage and devotion and vigor, accommodate quietly to his masterhood, smile undisturbed at his ineradicable ambition, discriminate the Christian from the man, profoundly esteem the one, and freely forgive the other. I should suffer often, no doubt. Attached to him only in this capacity, my body would be under rather a stringent yoke, but my heart and mind would be free. I should still have my unlighted self to turn to, my natural unenslaved feelings with which to communicate in moments of loneliness. There would be recesses in my mind which would be only mine, to which he never came, and sentiments growing there fresh and sheltered which his austerity could never blight, nor his measured warrior march trample down, but as his wife, at his side always, and always restrained, and always checked, forced to keep the fire of my nature continually low, to compel it to burn inwardly and never utter a cry, though the imprisoned flame consumed vital after vital. This would be unendurable. St. John, I exclaimed, when I had got so far in my meditation. Well, he answered icily, I repeat, I freely consent to go with you as your fellow missionary, but not as your wife. I cannot marry you and become part of you. A part of me you must become, he answered steadily. Otherwise the whole bargain is void. How can I, a man not yet 30, take out with me to India a girl of 19, unless she be married to me? How can we be forever together, sometimes in solitudes, sometimes amidst savage tribes, and unwed? Very well, I said shortly, under the circumstances, quite as well as if I were either your real sister or a man and a clergyman like yourself. It is known that you are not my sister. I cannot introduce you as such. To attempt it would be to fasten injurious suspicions on us both. And for the rest, though you have a man's vigorous brain, you have a woman's heart, and it would not do. It would do, I affirmed with some disdain, perfectly well. I have a woman's heart, but not where you are concerned. For you I have only a comrade's constancy, a fellow soldier's frankness, fidelity, fraternity, if you like, a neophyte's respect and submission to his hierophant, nothing more. Don't fear. It is what I want, he said, speaking to himself. It is just what I want. And there are obstacles in the way, They must be hewn down. Jane, you would not repent marrying me, be certain of that. We must be married. I repeat it. There is no other way, and undoubtedly enough of love would follow upon marriage to render the union right evening in your eyes. I scorn your idea of love, I could not help saying, as I rose up and stood before him, leaning my back against the rock. I scorn the counterfeit sentiment you offer. Yes, St. John, and I scorn you when you offer it. He looked at me fixedly, compressing his well-cut lips while he did so. Whether he was incensed or surprised, or what, it was not easy to tell. He could command his countenance thoroughly. I scarcely expected to hear that expression from you, he said. I think I have done and uttered nothing to deserve scorn. I was touched by his gentle tone and overawed by his high, calm mien. Forgive me the words, St. John, but it is your own fault that I have been roused to speak so unguardedly. You have introduced a topic on which our natures are at variance, a topic we should never discuss. The very name of love is an apple of discord between us. If the reality were required, what should we do? How should we feel? My dear cousin, abandon your scheme of marriage, forget it. No, said he, it is a long-cherished scheme, and the only one which can secure my great end. But I shall urge you no further at present. To-morrow, I leave home for Cambridge. I have many friends there to whom I should wish to say farewell. I shall be absent a fortnight. Take that space of time to consider my offer, and do not forget that if you reject it, it is not me you deny, but God. Through my means, he opens to you a noble career. As my wife only can you enter upon it. Refuse to be my wife, and you limit yourself forever to a track of selfish ease and barren obscurity. Tremble lest in that case you should be numbered with those who have denied the faith, and are worse than infidels. He had done. Turning from me, he once more looked to river, looked to hill, but this time his feelings were all pent in his heart. I was not worthy to hear them uttered. As I walked by his side homeward, I read well in his iron silence all he felt towards me, the disappointment of an austere and despotic nature, which has met resistance where it expected submission, the disapprobation of a cool, inflexible judgment, which has detected in another feelings and views in which it has no power to sympathize. In short, as a man, he would have wished to coerce me into obedience. It was only as a sincere Christian he bore so patiently with my perversity, and allowed so long a space for reflection and repentance. That night, after he had kissed his sisters, he thought proper to forget evening to shake hands with me, but left the room in silence. I, who, though I had no love, had much friendship for him, was hurt by the marked omission, so much hurt that tears started to my eyes. I see you and St. John have been quarreling, Jane, said Diana, during your walk on the moor. But go after him. He is now lingering in the passage expecting you. He will make it up. I have not much pride under such circumstances. I would always rather be happy than dignified, and I ran after him. He stood at the foot of the stairs. Good night, St. John, said I. Good night, Jane, he replied calmly. Then shake hands, I added. What a cold, loose touch he impressed on my fingers. He was deeply displeased by what had occurred that day. Cordiality would not warm, nor tears move him. No happy reconciliation was to be had with him, no cheering smile or generous word. But still the Christian was patient and placid, and when I asked him if he forgave me, he answered that he was not in the habit of cherishing the remembrance of vexation, that he had nothing to forgive, not having been offended. And with that answer he left me. Chapter Roman 35. He did not leave for Cambridge the next day, as he had said he would. He deferred his departure a whole week, and during that time he made me feel what severe punishment a good yet stern, a conscientious yet implacable man can inflict on one who has offended him, without one overt act of hostility, one upbraiding word. He contrived to impress me momently with the conviction that I was put beyond the pale of his favor. Not that St. John harbored a spirit of unchristian vindictiveness, not that he would have injured a hair of my head if it had been fully in his power to do so. Both by nature and principle, he was superior to the mean gratification of vengeance. He had forgiven me for saying I scorned him and his love, but he had not forgotten the words, and as long as he and I lived, he never would forget them. I saw by his look, when he turned to me, that they were always written on the air between me and him. Whenever I spoke, they sounded in my voice to his ear, and their echo toned every answer he gave me. He did not abstain from conversing with me. He evening called me as usual each morning to join him at his desk, and I fear the corrupt man within him had a pleasure unimparted to, and unshared by, the pure Christian, in evincing with what skill he could, while acting and speaking apparently just as usual, extract from every deed and every phrase the spirit of interest and approval which had formerly communicated a certain austere charm to his language and manner. To me, he was in reality become no longer flesh, but marble. His eye was a cold, bright, blue gem, his tongue a speaking instrument, nothing more. All this was torture to me, refined, lingering torture. It kept up a slow fire of indignation and a trembling trouble of grief, which harassed and crushed me altogether. I felt how, if I were his wife, this good man, pure as the deep sunless source, could soon kill me, without drawing from my veins a single drop of blood or receiving on his own crystal conscience the faintest stain of crime. Especially I felt this when I made any attempt to propitiate him. No Ruth met my Ruth. He experienced no suffering from estrangement, no yearning after reconciliation, and though, more than once, my fast-falling tears blistered the page over which we both bent, they produced no more effect on him than if his heart had been really a matter of stone or metal. To his sisters, meantime, he was somewhat kinder than usual, as if afraid that mere coldness would not sufficiently convince me how completely I was banished and banned. He added the force of contrast, and this I am sure he did not by malice, but on principle. The night before he left home, happening to see him walking in the garden about sunset, and remembering, as I looked at him, that this man, alienated as he now was, had once saved my life, and that we were near relations, I was moved to make a last attempt to regain his friendship. I went out and approached him as he stood leaning over the little gate. I spoke to the point at once. "St. John, I am unhappy because you are still angry with me. Let us be friends." "I hope we are friends," was the unmoved reply, while he still watched the rising of the moon, which he had been contemplating as I approached. "No, St. John, we are not friends as we were. You know that, are we not? That is wrong. For my part, I wish you no ill and all good. I believe you, St. John, for I am sure you are incapable of wishing any one ill, but, as I am your kinswoman, I should desire somewhat more of affection than that sort of general philanthropy you extend to mere strangers." "Of course," he said, "your wish is reasonable, and I am far from regarding you as a stranger." This, spoken in a cool, tranquil tone, was mortifying and baffling enough. Had I attended to the suggestions of pride and ire, I should immediately have left him, but something worked within me more strongly than those feelings could. I deeply venerated my cousin's talent and principle. His friendship was of value to me. To lose it tried me severely. I would not so soon relinquish the attempt to reconquer it. Must we part in this way, St. John? And when you go to India, will you leave me so, without a kinder word than you have yet spoken?" He now turned quite from the moon and faced me. "When I go to India, Jane, will I leave you? What? Do you not go to India? You said I could not unless I married you. And you will not marry me. You adhere to that resolution? Reader, do you know, as I do, what terror those cold people can put into the ice of their questions? How much of the fall of the avalanche is in their anger, of the breaking up of the frozen sea in their displeasure? No, son, John, I will not marry you. I adhere to my resolution." The avalanche had shaken and slid a little forward, but it did not yet crash down. Once more, why this refusal? He asked. Formerly, I answered, because you did not love me. Now, I reply, because you almost hate me. If I were to marry you, you would kill me. You are killing me now. His lips and cheeks turned white, quite white. "I should kill you. I am killing you. Your words are such as ought not to be used, violent, unfeminine, and untrue. They betray an unfortunate state of mind. They merit severe reproof. They would seem inexcusable, but that it is the duty of man to forgive his fellow evening until 77 times. I had finished the business now. While earnestly wishing to erase from his mind the trace of my former offense, I had stamped on that tenacious surface another and far deeper impression. I had burnt it in. Now you will truly hate me, I said. It is useless to attempt to conciliate you. I see I have made an eternal enemy of you. A fresh wrong did these words inflict, the worse, because they touched on the truth. That bloodless lip quivered to a temporary spasm. I knew the steely ire I had whetted. I was heart-wrung. You utterly misinterpret my words, I said, at once seizing his hand. I have no intention to grieve or pain you. Truly, I have not. Most bitterly he smiled. Most decidedly he withdrew his hand from mine. And now you recall your promise, and will not go to India at all, I presume? Said he, after a considerable pause. Yes, I will, as your assistant, I answered. A very long silence succeeded. What struggle there was in him between nature and grace in this interval, I cannot tell. Only singular gleams scintillated in his eyes, and strange shadows passed over his face. He spoke at last. I before proved to you the absurdity of a single woman of your age proposing to accompany abroad a single man of mine. I proved it to you in such terms as, I should have thought, would have prevented your ever again alluding to the plan. That you have done so, I regret, for your sake. I interrupted him. Anything like a tangible reproach gave me courage at once. Keep to common sense, St. John. You are verging on nonsense. You pretend to be shocked by what I have said. You are not really shocked, for, with your superior mind, you cannot be either so dull or so conceited as to misunderstand my meaning. I say again, I will be your curate, if you like, but never your wife. Again he turned lividly pale, but, as before, controlled his passion perfectly. He answered emphatically but calmly, a female curate, who is not my wife, would never suit me. With me, then, it seems, you cannot go. But if you are sincere in your offer, I will, while in town, speak to a married missionary whose wife needs a coadjutor. Your own fortune will make you independent of the Society's aid, and thus you may still be spared the dishonor of breaking your promise and deserting the band you engaged to join. Now I never had, as the reader knows, either given any formal promise or entered into any engagement, and this language was all much too hard and much too despotic for the occasion. I replied, there is no dishonor, no breach of promise, no desertion in the case. I am not under the slightest obligation to go to India, especially with strangers. With you I would have ventured much, because I admire, confide in, and, as a sister, I love you, but I am convinced that, go when and with whom I would, I should not live long in that climate. Ah, you are afraid of yourself, he said, curling his lip. I am. God did not give me my life to throw away, and to do as you wish me would, I begin to think, be almost equivalent to committing suicide. Moreover, before I definitively resolve on quitting England, I will know for certain whether I cannot be of greater use by remaining in it than by leaving it. What do you mean? It would be fruitless to attempt to explain, but there is a point on which I have long endured painful doubt, and I can go nowhere till by some means that doubt is removed. I know where your heart turns and to what it clings. The interest you cherish is lawless and unconsecrated. Long since you ought to have crushed it, now you should blush to allude to it. You think of Mr. Rochester. It was true, I confessed it by silence. Are you going to seek Mr. Rochester? I must find out what is become of him. It remains for me, then, he said, to remember you in my prayers, and to entreat God for you, in all earnestness, that you may not truly become a castaway. I had thought I recognized in you one of the chosen, but God sees not as man sees. His will be done. He opened the gate, passed through it, and strayed away down the glen. He was soon out of sight. On re-entering the parlor, I found Diana standing at the window, looking very thoughtful. Diana was a great deal taller than I. She put her hand on my shoulder, and, stooping, examined my face. Jane, she said, you are always agitated and pale now. I am sure there is something the matter. Tell me what business sent John and you have on hands. I have watched you this half hour from the window. You must forgive my being such a spy, but for a long time I have fancied I hardly know what sent. John is a strange being. She paused. I did not speak. Soon she resumed. That brother of mine cherishes peculiar views of some sort respecting you, I am sure. He has long distinguished you by a notice and interest he never showed to any one else. To what end? I wish he loved you. Does he, Jane? I put her cool hand to my hot forehead. No, Di, not one whit. Then why does he follow you so with his eyes, and get you so frequently alone with him, and keep you so continually at his side? Mary and I had both concluded he wished you to marry him. He does. He has asked me to be his wife. Diana clapped her hands. That is just what we hoped and thought. And you will marry him, Jane, won't you? And then he will stay in England. Far from that, Diana. His sole idea in proposing to me is to procure a fitting fellow laborer in his Indian toils. What? He wishes you to go to India? Yes. Madness, she exclaimed. You would not live 3 months there, I am certain. You never shall go. You have not consented, have you, Jane? I have refused to marry him, and have consequently displeased him, she suggested. Deeply, he will never forgive me, I fear. Yet I offered to accompany him as his sister. It was frantic folly to do so, Jane. Think of the task you undertook, one of incessant fatigue, where fatigue kills evening the strong, and you are weak. St. John, you know him, would urge you to impossibilities. With him there would be no permission to rest during the hot hours, and unfortunately, I have noticed, whatever he exacts, you force yourself to perform. I am astonished you found courage to refuse his hand. You do not love him then, Jane? Not as a husband, yet he is a handsome fellow. And I am so plain, you see, Di. We should never suit. Plain. You, not at all. You are much too pretty, as well as too good, to be grilled alive in Calcutta. And again she earnestly conjured me to give up all thoughts of going out with her brother. I must truly, I said, for when just now I repeated the offer of serving him for a deacon, he expressed himself shocked at my want of decency. He seemed to think I had committed an impropriety in proposing to accompany him unmarried, as if I had not from the first hoped to find in him a brother, and habitually regarded him as such. What makes you say he does not love you, Jane? You should hear himself on the subject. He has again and again explained that it is not himself, but his office he wishes to mate. He has told me I am formed for labor, not for love, which is true, no doubt. But, in my opinion, if I am not formed for love, it follows that I am not formed for marriage. Would it not be strange, Di, to be chained for life to a man who regarded one but as a useful tool, insupportable, unnatural, out of the question? And then, I continued, though I have only sisterly affection for him now, yet, if forced to be his wife, I can imagine the possibility of conceiving an inevitable, strange, torturing kind of love for him, because he is so talented, and there is often a certain heroic grandeur in his look, manner, and conversation. In that case, my lot would become unspeakably wretched. He would not want me to love him, and if I showed the feeling, he would make me sensible that it was a superfluity, unrequired by him, unbecoming in me. I know he would. And yet St. John is a good man, said Diana. He is a good and a great man, but he forgets, pitilessly, the feelings and claims of little people in pursuing his own large views. It is better, therefore, for the insignificant to keep out of his way, lest, in his progress, he should trample them down. Here he comes. I will leave you, Diana. And I hastened upstairs as I saw him entering the garden, but I was forced to meet him again at supper. During that meal he appeared just as composed as usual. I had thought he would hardly speak to me, and I was certain he had given up the pursuit of his matrimonial scheme. The sequel showed I was mistaken on both points. He addressed me precisely in his ordinary manner, or what had, of late, in his ordinary manner, one scrupulously polite. No doubt he had invoked the help of the Holy Spirit to subdue the anger I had roused in him, and now believed he had forgiven me once more. For the evening reading before prayers, he selected the 21st chapter of Revelation. It was at all times pleasant to listen while from his lips fell the words of the Bible. Never did his fine voice sound at once so sweet and full, never did his manner become so impressive in its noble simplicity, as when he delivered the oracles of God. And tonight that voice took a more solemn tone, that manner a more thrilling meaning. As he sat in the mid of his household circle, the May moon shining in through the uncurtained window, and rendering almost unnecessary the light of the candle on the table, as he sat there, bending over the great old Bible, and described from its page the vision of the new heaven and the new earth, told how God would come to dwell with men, how he would wipe away all tears from their eyes, and promised that there should be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, nor any more pain, because the former things were passed away. The succeeding words thrilled me strangely as he spoke them, especially as I felt, by the slight, indescribable alteration in sound, that in uttering them his eye had turned on me. He that overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son. But, was slowly, distinctly read, the fearful, the unbelieving, and shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Henceforward, I knew what fate sent. John feared for me. A calm, subdued triumph, blent with a longing earnestness, marked his enunciation of the last glorious verses of that chapter. The reader believed his name was already written in the Lamb's book of life, and he yearned after the hour which should admit him to the city to which the kings of the earth bring their glory and honor, which has no need of sun or moon to shine in it, because the glory of God lightens it, and the Lamb is the light of that. In the prayer following the chapter, all his energy gathered, all his stern zeal woke. He was in deep earnest, wrestling with God, and resolved on a conquest. He supplicated strength for the weak-hearted, guidance for wanderers from the fold, a return, evening at the 11th hour, for those whom the temptations of the world and the flesh were luring from the narrow path. He asked, he urged, he claimed the boon of a brand snatched from the burning. Earnestness is ever deeply solemn. First, as I listened to that prayer, I wondered at his. Then, when it continued and rose, I was touched by it, and at last awed. He felt the greatness and goodness of his purpose so sincerely. Others, who heard him plead for it, could not but feel it too. The prayer over, we took leave of him. He was to go at a very early hour in the morning. Diana and Mary, having kissed him, left the room, in compliance, I think, with a whispered hint from him. I tendered my hand and wished him a pleasant journey. "Thank you, Jane." As I said, I shall return from Cambridge in a fortnight. That space, then, is yet left you for reflection. If I listened to human pride, I should say no more to you of marriage with me, but I listen to my duty, and keep steadily in view my first aim, to do all things to the glory of God. My Master was long-suffering, so will I be. I cannot give you up to perdition as a vessel of wrath. Repent, resolve, while there is yet time. Remember, we are bid to work while it is day, warned that the night comes when no man shall work. Remember the fate of Dives, who had his good things in this life. God give you strength to choose that better part which shall not be taken from you. He laid his hand on my head as he uttered the last words. He had spoken earnestly, mildly. His look was not, truly, that of a lover beholding his mistress, but it was that of a pastor recalling his wandering sheep, or better, of a guardian angel watching the soul for which he is responsible. All men of talent, whether they be men of feeling or not, whether they be zealots, or aspirants, or despots, provided only they be sincere, have their sublime moments, when they subdue and rule. I felt veneration for St. John, veneration so strong that its impetus thrust me at once to the point I had so long shunned. I was tempted to cease struggling with him, to rush down the torrent of his will into the gulf of his existence, and there lose my own. I was almost as hard beset by him now as I had been once before, in a different way, by another. I was a fool both times. To have yielded then would have been an error of principle. To have yielded now would have been an error of judgment. So I think at this hour, when I look back to the crisis through the quiet medium of time, I was unconscious of folly at the instant. I stood motionless under my Hierophant's touch. My refusals were forgotten, my fears overcome, my wrestlings paralyzed. The impossible, i.e., my marriage with St. John, was fast becoming the possible. All was changing utterly with a sudden sweep. Religion called, angels beckoned, God commanded, life rolled together like a scroll, death's gates opening, showed eternity beyond. It seemed that for safety and bliss there, all here may be sacrificed in a second. The dim room was full of visions. Could you decide now? Asked the missionary. The inquiry was put in gentle tones. He drew me to him as gently. Oh, that gentleness! How far more potent is it than force? I could resist St. John's wrath. I grew pliant as a reed under his kindness. Yet I knew all the time, if I yielded now, I should not the less be made to repent, some day, of my former rebellion. His nature was not changed by 1 hour of solemn prayer, it was only elevated. I could decide if I were but certain, I answered. Were I but convinced that it is God's will I should marry you, I could vow to marry you here and now, come afterwards what would. My prayers are heard, ejaculated St. John. He pressed his hand firmer on my head, as if he claimed me. He surrounded me with his arm, almost as if he loved me. I say almost. I knew the difference, for I had felt what it was to be loved. But, like him, I had now put love out of the question, and thought only of duty. I contended with my inward dimness of vision before, which clouds yet rolled. I sincerely, deeply, fervently longed to do what was right, and only that. Show me the path. I entreated of heaven. I was excited more than I had ever been, and whether what followed was the effect of excitement the reader shall judge. All the house was still, for I believe all, except St. John and myself, were now retired to rest. The one candle was dying out, the room was full of moonlight. My heart beat fast and thick. I heard its throb. Suddenly it stood still to an inexpressible feeling that thrilled it through and passed at once to my head and extremities. The feeling was not like an electric shock, but it was quite as sharp, as strange, as startling. It acted on my senses as if their utmost activity hitherto had been but torpor, from which they were now summoned and forced to wake. They rose expectant. Eye and ear waited, while the flesh quivered on my bones. What have you heard? What do you see? Asked St. John. I saw nothing, but I heard a voice somewhere cry, Jane, Jane, Jane. Nothing more. Oh God, what is it? I gasped. I may have said, where is it? For it did not seem in the room, nor in the house, nor in the garden. It did not come out of the air, nor from under the earth, nor from overhead. I had heard it, where, or from where, forever impossible to know, and it was the voice of a human being, a known, loved, well-remembered voice, that of Edward Fairfax Rochester, and it spoke in pain and woe, wildly, eerily, urgently. I am coming, I cried. Wait for me. Oh, I will come. I flew to the door and looked into the passage. It was dark. I ran out into the garden. It was void. Where are you? I exclaimed. The hills beyond Marsh Glen sent the answer faintly back. Where are you? I listened. The wind sighed low in the firs. All was moorland loneliness and midnight hush. Down superstition, I commented, as that spectre rose up black by the black yew at the gate. This is not your deception, nor your witchcraft. It is the work of nature. She was roused, and did, no miracle, but her best. I broke from St. John, who had followed, and would have detained me. It was my time to assume ascendancy. My powers were in play and in force. I told him to forbear question or remark. I desired him to leave me. I must, and would be alone. He obeyed at once. Where there is energy to command well enough, obedience never fails. I mounted to my chamber, locked myself in, fell on my knees, and prayed in my way, a different way to St. John's, but effective in its own fashion. I seemed to penetrate very near a mighty spirit, and my soul rushed out in gratitude at his feet.